the back here, we have a couple of here. So waving to you. If you find this effort and these events useful, these are the women who put together, those myself included, these are the women who put together to birth this baby. And we do often call it a baby, including sometimes the rowdy Facebook group that we call it our 300-pound baby. The people laughing know what goes on in the Facebook group. That's why they're laughing. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce our first speaker for the 2021 Haitian Ladies Symposium. This year, we are igniting our power in all ways. Our first speaker today is Ms. Karen Andre, who truly needs no introduction, but I will introduce her. Karen is the Consumer Education and External Affairs. Sorry, stumbling over my words here. Karen Andre is the Consumer Education and External Affairs Associate Director for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's an independent agency of the United States government. Many people don't realize that outside of the departments that you recognize, the State Department, Treasury, that there are over 400 independent agencies within the US government. Karen has dedicated her life to public service and advocacy. She was recently appointed as the Associate Director for Consumer Education and External Affairs. Ms. Andre served in the White House as the Special Assistant to the President for Economic Agency Personnel after her historic turn as Senior Advisor for Florida and Senior Advisor for National Faith Outreach in the 2020 presidential election. She has also served as a Senior Advisor to Andrew Gillum in the 2018 Democratic nominee for governor in Florida. From 2014 to 2017, she served as a presidential appointee in the Obama administration as the White House liaison for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. She has worked to organize Haitian and African American diaspora communities nationwide on immigration and social justice issues. She is a sought-after, I agree, political strategist, speaker, host, lecturer, commentator, and, not listed here, an author. Karen?
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Can you hear me? Is that good? Test, test, test. I'm gonna act like I'm a DJ. Testing, testing. Like this is gonna be a great ball. I'm nervous, everyone, so give me a second. Bonjour, bonjour, bonjour. I'm gonna try not to cry because the mascara is not waterproof. The tears are because I'm home. I'm in community. I'm in fellowship with all these beautiful women. It's been 2 years since I've seen you, since we've been able to be in a room together. So this feels amazing, and a lot has happened in those 2 years, hasn't it? Way too much. Our central nervous systems are not okay. Okay? That's where the seat of our pain, our emotions, and everything we process in this world go through. And none of us are robots. None of us are made of iron. We're all human. And in the last 8 weeks alone, our collective community, has been devastated time and time again. And I just want to not start from a negative space, but from a true and authentic space to say, being here in this moment in this period of history, with what we've been through, not just the last several hundred years, but in the last 2 months, we're at a pivotal point as a diaspora, as women, as a community, as human beings. And so I'm emotional because I love to MC, I love to get the crowd united, but the better use of my talents is this conversation. The best and highest use of our time is what we need to be focusing on, because the time and what must be done is so critical. So today's conversation will focus on power. It is the beginning of what we are going to call the Own Your Power series, because as we all know, depuis femmes haïtiennes mettent tête yo ensemble, depuis yo frappe pied yo, match fini. Okay? But it takes some doing to get us to fully own our power, to be fully effective, to make the transformative change. Not superficial, not surface, transformative change that is necessary, in particular in this day and time. So this has been a divine appointment. I've had a lot to say for a long time, and it's not lost on me that we're in this moment weeks after I left the White House that many of you probably aren't very happy with right now. And I can certainly understand why, and am open to that discussion as well. But first of all, let's give the Haitian Ladies Network a round of applause for gathering us again. We'll talk more about the behind the scenes, but my sisters have been working like Hebrew slaves to hold space, to make space, and to provide the launching pad for you all, for we all to own our power. And chapeau bas, because m'konnen nou ba dormi, mesdames, m'konnen monsieur yo fâché, ou a teke yo lundi soir. En attendant, ça gen monsieur. En attendant, chapeau bas, and thank you all for being here, for traveling, for giving your time and your resources to come together to figure out strategies. And so without further ado, today's conversation is about how we own our political power, how we build political power, what is political power. And we were intentional in not making this a panel, because panels are great. But at this time, with what we're facing and what we've just endured, we need answers, we need strategy, we need an action table, and so that's why we're doing it this way. And I'm certainly not the only person in the community that can have this conversation, but I just happened to be the first to open my big mouth when Nadine called and volunteered. So let's talk a little bit about power. I want you all to think about and raise your hand a group or an individual that when you think of the word power comes to mind. Anyone? Raise your hand. Yes. Fantastic. All right, appreciate that. Yes, sister? Michelle Obama. Okay, last one. The Jewish community. Very good. All right, last one here. White men in America. White men in America. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, that's a whole other master. Oh, we can talk about Brad all day long. That's another master class. We literally have a group chat where we talk about owning the power of your inner Brad. Walking into the room like an entitled white male and making the space your own. Next Own Your Power session, but great answers, lady. So we heard Michelle Obama, we heard Haitian Ladies Network, we heard the Jewish community, and we heard white males. And from a historic lens, we know that white males founded and created this country in a way, l'angou pa yo, façon pour bénéficier tête pa yo. Okay? And there's lessons, best practices and worst practices we can take from that as a community, right? Michelle Obama, I would say, is not only powerful, but is influential, okay? And the Haitian Ladies Network, there is power here. We have to figure out how to better leverage it. Would we agree? Yes. And no, the answer is not everybody give $1 and blah, blah, blah. It's a little bit more complex than that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to unpack that. And then the answer about the Jewish community. Let's take that as a model. I really appreciate that, because there are many who view the power and influence the Jewish community has in this government and in this country as something to emulate and model. But why is that? Anybody? Yes?
Their economic strength.
Economic strength. I'm glad you said that. Hold that thought. We're going to come back to that. Excellent. Yes. Unity. Okay. Unity. Anybody else?
Their power among the white men of America.
Their power among the white men of America. All excellent answers. I would submit to you that all of that is true, particularly the economic might. And what we need to do, and what I would propose, is that all of these groups do a couple of things, and they do it well and exceptionally. And this is where I want to lead you on this conversation today. They are, somebody said unity. Another word for unity is organized, right? We'll talk about what that looks like, and then assess ourselves. Has anybody ever heard of a SWOT analysis? Yes. Great, excellent. I heard lots of yeses. For those who don't know what a SWOT analysis is, it's a management tool that is used often in corporate America or in the nonprofit space, where you analyze an institution, an individual, a project to see its effectiveness. So you measure its strengths, its weaknesses. What's the A again? The O. Opportunities and the threats. Merci, mesdames. Okay, thank you. I told you I was nervous, okay? So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats, right? What if we did that on the Haitian American community? Another own your power. But the point is, organizing, right, requires assessing your strengths, your weakness, the opportunities, and your threats. And it takes time and deliberation to do. And if we, again, take the Jewish American community and their effectiveness in advocacy and power, we see that they are very organized. And we'll talk about how we get there. They're also very strategic. Similar, but not the same. Can anybody explain to me what you think being strategic means, particularly in the political space? Yes, Naomi.
Strategy leads to action.
Strategy leads to action.
Intentionally placing people in the right sectors.
Intentionally placing people in the right sectors. Yes. Using research to inform your goals. Absolutely great answers. And then lastly, you organize, gather people, right? You strategize, you come up with a plan and goals and a strategy to implement them. And then you mobilize and put it into action. Seems very simplistic, right? In theory, voila, okay? So if we can use that as a roadmap, one of the things I encourage is for us to do asset mapping. Because if we're going to organize, let's say we decide we want to build 100 schools in Haiti, right? The way my mind works is, who do I know? Where are they? How can I access them? How can I leverage their influence? And this brings me back to the crux of political power. Politics is, for me, in my definition, it's the art and the history of relationships. There is no politics without humans. Politics is all a human. It's not like astrophysics and math with universal laws and gravity. You go up, you're going to come. No, everything about politics is created by us. And everything about politics is governed by us. And as a person that has been working in the political field for the last 20 years, every success, every win, every ability I've been able to score to move the needle has been based on a relationship. And we have to ask ourselves as a community, how are we in building relationships amongst each other? How are we in building relationships outside of our community? Because not for nothing, we have a reputation of being rather insular. Okay? All right. It's great for us to gather here because we have to start at the base. But do we go beyond? Do we stay in the middle circle? Okay? Because there's opportunities we miss by being so insular. Okay? Once you gather your team, You have to build bridges. We can't do it alone, and we shouldn't want to. And I have loads of examples of missed opportunities that we're going to talk about. So we talked about, back to the organizing, we talked about asset mapping. So in order to asset map, you have to know people. In order to know people, you have to get out there and circulate and network. How do you all think we do as a community in terms of networking? Okay, so you all taking notes here on some best practices? Okay, because I'm not just going to hand it to you. You all are seeing where I'm coming from, right? Let me give you a simple example. Whew. So first of all, in absolute transparency, I was not at the White House any longer as an employee the day that photo surfaced on the internet. God knows his child. He knows I probably would have gotten fired had I been sitting at a desk that day, because they made a mistake and gave me a blue badge that would have allowed me to enter into the West Wing and say WTF. So I had, my last day was that previous Friday, the 17th. Okay? Why am I sharing that? Because I was then faced with a challenge and an opportunity. The challenge was trying to find a way to be of help, both inside the White House to get them together, and also be of help in the community. The opportunity was, since I was no longer in the White House, the gag that goes over your mouth, as the babuket, as my mother would call it, that goes over your mouth as a White House official was released. So prior to that, I couldn't speak to elected officials, I couldn't organize, I couldn't fundraise, I couldn't do anything political at all. And so had I still been a White House employee, I could not have picked up the phone and called people in Chuck Schumer's office. I could not have picked up the phone and talked to my friends that worked for Elizabeth Warren. I could not have picked up the phone and helped try to fundraise to help some folks get some money to the migrants. That's just strictly forbidden by the ethics rule. Now, back to asset mapping. What I was able to do, the opportunity that presented itself, is I now looked across the landscape of the last 20 years of my political career, and I started to think, and this is our thought process. Who can influence the West Wing? Okay, actually take a step back. Who are the decision makers in this issue? Is it Mayorkas at DHS? Is it Blinken at State? Is it Linda Green at the State Department? Who? Because I was in the White House, I know so much of this runs through the West Wing. So this next step is I've identified the target, okay? Taking notes, identify your target. Then identify what access or availability you have to said target, because that's where influence comes in, okay? So who do I know in the West Wing? I called the person I knew. I sent the photos. I sent the examples of what it looked like in Cuba, what it looked like in Afghanistan, what it looked like for the Asian crime bill, and said, you like these optics? Is this gonna work for us? Is this the values that we sold on the campaign? Being totally honest here. So in my personal asset mapping, I did that, identified the target, used the access that I had, and then I started to think about what other people in my network I could leverage to apply pressure on said target, okay? So you have to study the target to understand that. You have to ask, who does the West Wing jump for when they call? And I won't go over that list, but that is the list I focused on. And let me give you a little example of some of our cultural norms that sometimes hem us up. Identified the target, made contact with my direct access, and then started seeing whom else I knew could apply pressure. But guess what, guys? One of the things we don't do well is network. And one of the things we don't do well is see beyond people's titles. Some of our cultural norms are holding us up. Maybe not you all in this room. C'est pas nous-mêmes, non, mesdames. C'est pas nous-mêmes, nous, dans l'internet, là, c'est pas nous-mêmes. C'est pas avec nous, l'autre haïtien, yo. L'autre haïtien, yo, Yon tendance, yon ti jan elitist. Oh, gen ti ceci, cela. But guess what? Karen Andre was the bomb 10 years ago before you ever knew who she was. Guerline Jozef was the bomb 10 years ago before you ever knew who she was. So it's not the title that makes us, right? It's your heart, it's what you stand for, and your capacity. I say all that to say that it just so happened the Saturday night before this horrible photo came out, I met a young man who, if I were thinking in my Haitian elitist brain, did not have a title that was high enough for me to pay attention to him. But because I'm not Haitian in that sense, and he was introduced to me as a staffer in Chuck Schumer's office, not even knowing what was around the corner on Monday, I said, oh, you in Leader Schumer's office? Oh. Regine, hello! Okay, I'm gonna really enjoy this example now. Because I don't know Regine, but her and my son are now best friends. Great job. So you can appreciate this. You absolutely trained him well. Last day is the 17th. On the 18th, I'm at an event, another young Haitian, because we have to groom and mentor. We don't do enough succession planning. Write that down, please. So another young Haitian that I know from the Hill was telling me, hey, I think Tamara actually gave them the idea of forming Haitian Americans working on Capitol Hill. Organize, okay? Okay, organize. Did you know such a thing, such a group existed? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that have been helpful to know last week? Yes. Just saying. Okay, so another mentee comes, says, hey, this is, I won't say his name, he's working in Leader Schumer's office, because I know one of the levers for the West Wing is the Senate leader, Chuck Schumer, not even knowing I would need it 48 hours later. Always looking for the opportunity. Always looking to network. Always looking to build bridges, make allies. Always looking to also be of service. So in that moment, I was like, that's amazing that you're there. We all need to get together and talk with the young Haitians on the Hill. Let's make sure we connect. And I told the young man in between, please connect us. And they listened to me. So now, Monday comes, and I'm sitting there asset mapping, because being in leadership at a time when I personally invested my time and came to my community to say, put your faith in this future administration, you can imagine the knots in my stomach, okay? So I'm asset mapping. I was like, oh, that young man I just met. I didn't have a contact in Schumer's office before that. I didn't. But by Monday night at 10 o'clock, we were on the phone. By 12:40 p.m., Leader Schumer put out this tweet. Not only did he condemn the photo, but he called for the revocation of Title 42. He went further than we could have asked. Now, I'm not saying my call alone, because we have Haitian elected officials in New York who have great relationships with Member Schumer, but the point is organizing and asset mapping. Just that little example I can give you, okay? So when we talk again about organizing, this is organizing, creating the network, and what we tend to do is say, okay, well, this has to be the body. Maybe, if we have the capacity, you have to examine the capacity of the organization, or this could be the place where I meet someone that could help me take it to the next level. If you're in media, this is the place where I could meet the person that's in media that we could build. I submit to you, and what I learned that week in terms of organization or the lack thereof in our community is whatever your discipline is, social worker, lawyer, doctor, nurse, teacher, if you don't know your craft and the key power players in your field and industry, not only do you know them, but you have to find a way for them to know you, for you to have access to them, because you never know when you're going to need them. So here it is, I'm having conversations with elected officials who are suggesting Man, maybe we write a letter to governors. It's like we don't have time to write a letter. Okay? We just got to go straight to the DGA. Sac DGA. You raise your hand to lead people. And as we know, leadership can have life-changing impact. So if you're an elected official, it's your job to know that the Democratic Governors Association exists. It's an organization of all the governors across the country that are Democrats. And if we want to activate a plan to ask said Democratic governors to take in said migrants, we can't be asking in the middle of the hurricane, sac DGA. Now, this is not a knock on my elected officials who I passionately advocate. My sister here, thank you, Councilwoman Mary Estime Irvin from North Miami for being with us. You know I advocate with you all and want to help build your power every day. But I'm giving you an example, and if I'm talking to you as a licensed clinical social worker, and I say we need some social workers at the border, and you don't know the governing association for your how can you really be of full impact and power? Okay? All right? So another situation from that week, talked to a municipal lawyer who is a city attorney for a municipality. So we're gonna put out a resolution, another thing that we do. Bel tableau. Ça resolution pas le faire pour. Ça la fait pour. Qui est-ce qui l'île? How does it move? I'm sorry, like I'm at the point, in a city, right. Way away from the target, which is where, let's say Michelin, West Wing, right, is Michelin. Oui, ou là, avec ti resolution, non, mais Michelin. Est-ce que Michelin a viré tête gade ou with your resolution? So that's performative. It makes us feel good, makes you feel like you did something. It's like the Twitter thugs. You want to Twitter, boy, you want to. Maybe you all boop. That's it. That's it. Okay? They're not organizing. They're not strategizing. They're not asset mapping. They're not planning. Okay, great. But if you're not building something, if you're not adding to the infrastructure, if you're not building scale, then you're part of the problem. Yes. We will know. Yes. So I know I'm a little bit all over the place. So in our organizing, I realized that I spoke to not just Haitians, Americans who were just upset. Cuban, Venezuelan, African American, Jamaican, and in too many of them, they did not know what to do in that moment. They did not know who to call. They did not know how to access and leverage power. Okay? So I had to tell the elected officials, well, if you're a state elected official, you should convene all the other state elected officials in your state to call the DNC, okay? That's your parent organization, and tell them, what the hell? And what's the message? Messaging is important. What's the message you want to send to the DNC? What matters to the DNC? Votes. So what would you say, let's see, so who else said votes on this side? So what would you say to the DNC? What's the message?
We have a big community, we have alliances, we have people who can vote, so we have to get up and step up and do something.
So she said, we have a big community and we have votes, and DNC, you should get up and do something. Let's unpack that a little bit more. Why would the DNC care about that?
Because elections are coming up, and if the House changes, they lose a lot.
2022, that's right. Okay, constituents, these are your constituents. Are Haitian, right? Right, but what about the fact in terms of messaging? Let's say we talk to a Democrat who doesn't have a large Haitian constituency. This is a human rights photo. This is bigger than just us. Do you know how many African Americans were triggered? You should have seen the way the president of the NAACP was going in hard, okay? They were getting on them before I could even reach them to say get on them, okay? So again, when we're thinking, we have to think broader than the immediate nucleus. So the messaging is important, but also seeing who else can join us in this fight. Because it was a much bigger coalition, allies, right? But we just said we're not good at networking. So where are our allies? Okay? Back to the elitism. If I had applied the elitism that the other Haitians do, the national training, he is a national director for NAACP. Depuis en 2008, chercher job, m'aider j'aime capable. How does that repay me? I just did it to do it because I needed somebody to do it for me at a time when there was nobody to do it. So always pay it forward, always pay it back. Now he's the one of the national directors at NAACP. Hey, asset mapped friend. Would you like some talking points directly from the Haitian American community about this issue? We have folks. Hello, Francesca Menez. Hello, Francois. Hello, XYZ person that I know, Kika Frappe. Let me connect you with NAACP. Because if they're going to go into the West Wing, they have to have talking points that are directly from us. Because if you tell me right now to go advocate for Trinidad, and they tell me, well, you know, we gave Trinidad $3 billion of aid. I thought, oh, okay, that sounds good. But Trinidad don't get no idea. Oh, no. They promised that over 50 years. But if I don't know that, if I'm not Trinidadian, I can't fight back. So again, organizing, asset mapping, identifying your target, figuring out the levers, right? And then utilizing any and all allies that you must be building all along. I would submit to you that one of my greatest pains is to watch another shortcoming we have, our reactionary response to crisis. Let me hold your hand, sister, because whew, makabab, whew.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Sorry.
If you think of the emergencies as bookends, right? As a matter of fact, let's do it now here. Gurleen, in 2019, this is Guerline Jozef from Haitian Bridge Alliance, a woman that I think is a national treasure and should be honored by CNN as such. I got urgent calls in 2019. 2016. When the woman was found under the gate crying, that was 2019. I went back to my Instagram to double check. I know you've been in the game far before that, but I'm giving an example of bookends, okay? So crisis number one was when that video went viral. Oh, mes amis, okay. People calling me, okay, great. What's the plan? What's the strategy? What's the follow-up? Okay? Aussitôt que caméra yo ale, crickets. Gurleen la toujours. Okay? She never stopped. So that's 2019, and now we're at 2021. Another viral. But what did you do between the 2 years? What didn't they? So our homework, guys, is to understand and fully own our role in being the authors of our misfortune. Author, how do you say authors of our misfortune in Creole? Our homework. Okay, so our homework is to take responsibility and ownership of how we are part of our authors of our own misfortune. We have to take a real stock of the things that we do and fail to do, right? If we're gonna fix it. I'm not here to beat up anybody, but if, you know how Haitians go, they tell a doctor, "Yon do l'estomac." and the doctor thinking is here, and Francois is here. So if I can't tell you where the pain really is, Doc, okay, Dr. Harrigan, you can't really assess and help heal, right? So that's my only intention here. So how are we doing on time, by the way?
Great on time.
Oh, great. Awesome. Thank you. So as we talk about how we're the authors of our own misfortune, taking this example with our CNN national hero here, 2019 to 2021, a person in media reached out to me, okay, all right, let me connect you with this person. Let me connect you with that person. This is how you can move the needle. She didn't call me this time. She knew better because she knows nothing has happened. So one of the things that hamper us is we're reactionary and we are not proactive enough. Okay? Many of us are doing great things in our individual sphere, so it's not that I'm trying to knock that down. But if we wait till the hurricane is above us to start to say, okay, porta barrio. So the work is in between the crises, guys. The work is building, organizing, mapping, strategizing, linkaging, okay? Because I know I've literally watched a person pick up a phone and make a phone call and change either policy, somebody's life, somebody gets hired, somebody gets fired, and it really is partially who you know. The question is, who do we know? And who knows us? Back to another situation, another crisis.
Before you go to that
Yes.
point of MC privilege,
Please.
talk about timing, right? The unrealistic expectations of how quickly you get from doing something to seeing the result that you want.
Absolutely. Great question. One of the other things, because we don't study our craft, we have unrealistic expectations of what can be done and how quickly it can be done. And I'll take my beautiful councilwoman here. Any job you start in, I don't care who you are, whether you're Barack Obama, whether you're Councilwoman Steril, you're stepping into a new environment. There's new language, there's new players, there's new actors, there's new history that you have to learn. You have to learn how to do your job. Whether you're a mayor, a president, whether you're a CEO, you need time. We call it the learning curve, right? Communauté haïtienne, vous mettez en position demain. Vous supposez buy $3 billion, vous supposez deliver X, everything. Not realistic. Not realistic. I'll give you a real life example. I went to go work for a labor union, SEIU, in 2006. They asked me to work on a project to get funding from the state that was going to change the hours that CNAs had to work at the bedside. So I think they were maybe at, before they could get a break. So maybe it was, the goal was to get them to 2.5 hours. So maybe at the time they had to work 4 hours before they get a break. It's a long time when you're lifting and taking care of seniors and using your back. So worked on it, and we got it passed that year. But guess what? The union had been working on that for 6 years. 6 years going back time after time, legislative session after legislative session. And so it was a confluence of opportunities that we used to make it happen. But my point is, when you're trying to wield your power, it doesn't happen overnight. Take an example. We talked about the Jewish American community. Let's talk about this whole guns rights thing in this country. They massacred children in Newtown. They killed children in Parkland. Two wealthy communities, affluent, full of powerful white males. Have they gotten gun reform yet? How long has that debate been going on? Always. And we know one of the reasons is because you have special interests on the other side and a whole lobbying core, and it's a whole thing. So how do they organize, strategize, mobilize, and asset map to move the needle? If they, who come from affluence in this country, lang na se lang yo, pays se pays yo, Woman, si yo même y appliqué pour nous, toujours, et nous-mêmes. But we expect, okay, Karine entre dans la Maison Blanche, okay, everything. No, I'm one person. Karine Jean-Pierre is one person. So that brings me to talk about power versus influence. I sat down one day and I kind of looked through my photo album and I saw, photos with this elected official and that person or whatever. And I said to myself, tout ça c'est rance. So it's not just you, I give it to myself too. Because to me, power and influence is answered this way. If I call them, will they pick up? If I even have their number. Right? Oh, photo for the gram. Ooh. Big deal. Sa photo sa abdeview demain sous une crise. Do you have their number? Will they pick up your phone? And if they pick up your phone, est-ce que c'est bluffé ya bluffé ou bien sous mandé ou fait un bagay ya fait vraiment? You all see power and influence there? I'll submit to you, as we talk about power and influence and realistic expectations, those who are calling for myself or Karine or other Haitians inside the White House to resign don't understand. First of all, they didn't know I was already out, but they don't understand that those who were on the inside were shaking the table and saying, And as anemic as we may feel, the response was, please believe, if your sisters weren't inside, okay? And so we're not trying to celebrate that, but please trust that there are some people speaking truth to power on your behalf with their full chest, okay? And that you will continue to see the results of that work. But we're impatient. So, okay, Monsieur Blanc, dénoncer administration, okay, great. There's a lot of backstory you don't know about that. So great. We have to have people on the inside. We have to have allies. We have to be strategic. Who said placing somebody, strategy is about placing people in certain places, right? So I hope you've taken some of the notes back into organizing. It's about coalescing, right? Seeing where your assets are, where your points are. And if you identify that you don't know or don't have the connections, then it is your job to start to be strategic and asset map and literally make a list of who do I need to know, who do I need to access in order to achieve certain goals. Let's talk a little bit about influence again. Because it's leveraging your influence, as I said earlier, that is part of your power. Okay? So you all know the name Valerie Jarrett. Yeah. Why is she a household name to you? Somebody on this side. She was influential in the Obama administration. She's a mentor to somebody you all said is powerful, Michelle Obama and Barack Obama. And one of the other aspects of power is access. Back to who will take your call, who will return your call, and who can you make an ask to, right? That will actually deliver on the ask. And it has to be the right ask. Because if I go to State Representative Doti Joseph and I say, I need you to pass immigration law, I just made the wrong ask to the wrong party. Because immigration law is the exclusive province of Congress. So now I've wasted an opportunity. I've wasted a chance to make the right ask of the state representative, and I've missed the chance to catch the congressperson who's really responsible for said thing. So we have to study our craft. We have to know, right, who the right people are, what's within their purview to do, okay? Because we elect Haitians all the time and expect them to bring home all types of Santa Claus Christmas things that, one, are not realistic, but also may not be within their purview. So when we talk about influence, Valerie Jarrett is influential because of her proximity, her access, right, and her influence over the Obamas, who were the President and First Lady of the United States. Let's talk about Patrick Gaspard. Anybody know who that is? Tell me, somebody. Great. She knows his resume. Very good. No, it's great. It's important because that's asset mapping. Because at each stage of his career, he has been positioned to be an asset to this community. When he was at 1199, that's another part of what I'm talking about in terms of asset mapping and building power. One of our key allies that we do not leverage is labor, is the labor community. Do you know, syndicat? Do you know how many Haitians are part of labor unions? Just taking Florida as an example, whether they're maintenance workers, whether they're service workers, nurses, CNAs, millions of dollars fall into the coffers of these labor organizations from the dues that their members pay, many of which are Haitian, okay? So 1199 SCIU, way back in the day, has been a major, comment dit ba là, la ba nou jarret, sans nou ba même konnen. Se wè nou paret, nou wè sen, nou wè lumière, nou wè micro, we don't know who paid for it. And nou bezwen goumen, we want to have a rally. But oftentimes it's labor and national organizations that people have key connections with that are underwriting these things. And if we don't know that, and if we don't have access to them, and if we don't have a relationship with them, then what are we really doing? Leonie, you're in Florida. Do you have relationships with the labor unions? Little, right? Right. But imagine, with all the good work that you and Gypsy are doing, if a linkage came with the labor organizations, because many of them may be your constituents at Sutla, right? Absolutely. So a missed opportunity that we can fix very easily. It can just be a phone call. Right. Okay. Just saying. We're identifying opportunities as examples here. So if we've been traversing this country for 50 years and we cannot asset map national, regional, and local partners in all of our individual spheres, we're wasting our time, guys. Okay? So you picking up the homework? Yes. I don't care what you do and where you work, you need to know from the grassroots to the top, who are the people that you need to link with? And not only for you, but also to be of help to them. Because the people who have taken my call are people that before I had an ask, I was helping them. So it's a give and take, right?
Before you move from that, I'd like you to go into spelling out what it means to pay your dues and what leverage that does for you in terms of every year there's a agenda that these unions push, whether it's at the state legislature or Congress, and how those agenda items are curated, like who decides what the union is pushing, and you as a dues paying member, what is your role in deciding what those dues then push for?
Right. So there is great power if you're a member of a labor union. A friend of mine is having an issue as an educator right now, and she joined her labor union so that they can advocate on her behalf. One of the reasons people were upset because the program at the border wasn't immediately eliminated is because there is a union. There have to be some labor negotiations to show and investigate that there was wrongdoing to make sure that you can effectively eliminate it. But you don't even know. You don't even know what's going on. Don't you want a union to fight for you on your job? So part of democracy is understanding that I may not get my way immediately. There's a process, but I'm going to follow the process. I'm going to be consistent. But what does that require? Staying engaged between the crises, right? Because We should be watching to see if that program is eliminated 3 months from that. Or do they try to quietly bring it back? But guess what? We're not. Bullshit. I mean, we need to bumble shit sometimes. Okay, it's part of our DNA, and I think joy is part of resistance, but the work is nonstop, it's continual. And to answer the question Tamar brought out is, these members of these labor unions have great power because, again, the bank of the labor union is filled with their dues. Those dues they use to help endorse and fund candidates who want their vote, their block vote, because if you're a labor union and you represent 50,000 people and I get your labor union to endorse me, that's 50,000 votes in my bank as a candidate, okay? And so those members have power to say, said labor union, every year you go to Tallahassee, you go to Albany, and you fight for XYZ legislation. Well, us Haitians in this organization, we're facing this issue on the ground, and we want this to be part of your legislative agenda this year. We want to exercise our power and influence and demand this, and we want to work with you all. That's an example. Did I cover it? And so, anybody ever think about that strategy? Anybody work in the labor area or have? So you know what I'm talking about. Yes, Tamar.
But it's not just labor, right? Like,
of course.
all those organizations you talked about, if I'm an elected official, getting the agenda for, the DNC, there are discussions and meetings on how they, put together their democratic agenda.
Right.
Or at the state legislature, the caucus of state legislators and things like that.
Yeah.
So at every level of all titles that we hold.
Right, absolutely. So back to, again, knowing your craft. It can be very overwhelming, I get it. But the reality is, if we don't organize ourselves, identify us, come up with a plan with goals, and sometimes we make our goals huge. Sometimes you gotta start small, get small wins, and build from there. So organizing, strategizing means coming up with a plan and with actionable goals, and then mobilizing everyone that you need to activate it. And it sounds very simplistic, and I'm trying to keep top lines here so we don't have a lot of time, but the things that I've identified that stop us sometimes is us being too insular and not networking enough. So I'm trying to leave you with the items. So networking, right? Building allies, right? And consensus building. Because the reality is, we could have leveraged not only our African American friends and allies, the greater Caribbean community was insulted. Who was calling CARICOM and asking them to put pressure on? Okay? You thinking, you following me here? Right? Who's calling the NAACP? Who's calling National Airborne League? Which one of you have a relationship with anybody, even at the local level with these? Because yo-même yo élève yo campé pour nous. When's the last time you heard Haitians standing up to fight for anybody else? But nous fâchés, tout le monde supposé venir camper avec nous. Porter colère. When's the last time? Yes.
And if I may,
Yes.
it's not that people don't reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen situations c'est nous haïtiens, c'est nous côté problème, and not accepting the help that the other communities are helping us because we want to be the leaders. Very often, not do it effectively. I am sorry.
You just spoke a sermon. Thank you, because that's the point, that part of our cultural norms that I forgot to talk about. I think you started a thing here.
We're 1804, so we gotta leave.
Let me make this point. I'll come back to you and remind me. Hold on. Let me call on you. I want to underscore. Thank you so much, because it's a point that I had here that I hadn't gotten to that I might have forgotten. We talked about cultural norms. We talked about the behaviors and the practices and the habits that we engage in, consciously or unconsciously, that do trip us up. Petit. You know it's going to be good when I say petit. That's the Haitian version of girl. Or as you young people say, big. So, oui, bum Dieu. Tamara is my witness. Coming off the 2020 presidential campaign, I did not like human beings. I was tired of all y'all. Babies and puppies, that's it. That's all I can tolerate. It was just so toxic. But it dawned on me that we won, and there was a huge opportunity here, multiple opportunities. Not even being able to see back in November that we're going to have this hellish year as a community. I was looking at knowing from the campaign the billions of dollars that were going to be resourced to build back the economy, the opportunities for small businesses, for schools, for cities, for counties, that if we were not organized, if we didn't create a cup to receive it, we were going to lose out. I was thinking about proactive good things, not even reacting to horrors and tragedies. I was asking myself, as much as I didn't like y'all or any human being at that time because I was just tired and cranky, I got to get folks to understand that we need a national organization that can mobilize, organize, strategize, not on the weekends, not after work, okay? Not part-time, full-time. Chaque seconde. Because the work is that dire and needed. And we have some. Thank God we have a Santla in Miami that is doing social services and God's work and is the premier organization in its model of being able to be thoughtful, intelligent, deliberative. They have their own building, they're economically well-founded, and they do proper planning and succession planning. So chapeau bas to them. And I'm just going to give Florida examples because I'm from Florida. It's not a knock on New York or anybody else. We have Femme Haitienne in Miami that was born out of crisis from the Haitian Refugee Immigration Fairness Act battle that we led in 1998. Don't let the lack of grades fool you. I've been around a little bit. And that gave birth to the ascension of the public leader that we know as Marlene Bastien, who had already been fighting. But because of her resonance at that time, FUM went from a volunteer organization to an actual funded organization that we know today. So yes, we have some organizations that actually have staff, and they're doing work on the ground in their cities. But we do not still have a fully staffed and funded version of NAACP. We do not have a fully staffed and funded version of NALEO. Who knows what NALEO is? Not Tamar. Okay, not Leone. Anybody else? Okay. National Association of Latin Elected Officials. Okay? So they're the Latin version of the CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus. Mabvini, mesdames. I said we do not have a fully staffed and funded. You see where I'm going? Okay. Trust me. So this is as much as I didn't like human beings, this is, oh yes, National Haitian American Elected Officials Network, NEON, born, I think in 2009, when, I'm getting back to your point, a group of Haitian electeds wanted to go to DC to meet with President Obama. They utilized access through Patrick Gaspard and Marie Saint-Fleur in Boston to try to get a meeting. President Obama said, and Patrick said, I'm going to say it in Creole, au lieu que nous venions 2-3 grains de 5, pour que nous pas former une organisation, qui l'organisation ça dit que c'est association de élus nationales américaines qui t'a même rencontré avec le président, ça a porté plus poids. président, and his chief Haitian official gave the idea, and that was the beginning of Neon. Okay? I keep receipts now. I keep receipts. But I use them for good. My point is, this Glen Sink thing is rooted in people wanting credit far too often. I'm doing parler, mesdames. Pas don't do that. I can't see into everyone's heart, but the reason I was bringing up the example in after the election is I went and I met with some folks that regularly fund candidates and institutions in the Haitian community in the Northeast, and I said, guys, there's opportunity coming around the corner with this administration. Je connais si m'di nous former une organisation journée jodi an, m'di ou mettez Tama président, yon moun k'ap di m'pa marcher avec Tama. M'di OK, mettez Gurleen, m'pa l'encore Gurleen. And we'll be going like this all day long, right? Sou di Jésus, m'pa chrétien. So don't get me started about chrétien, non-chrétien, l'évangile, catholique. You picking up what I'm putting down? Yep. Building consensus among us is like rocket science. Point number one. So I said, okay, nous, j'ai étudié nous. So I'm all right, mais nous élis monsieur dame yo. You elected them. C'est nous boyo monter. Nous faisons demander de fonds pour nous bailler Jarrett, pour nous former un Neon qui bien établi tant que CBC. Qui établit un coup n'allait yo. Oui, d'accord. Great. Okay, let's do it. Now, the minute I got called to go into the White House, and I said, okay, guys, I was gonna try to start it up for 3 months and then hand it over, but I got the call. So here's a list of 3 other amazing cerveaux that can do this work, become an executive director. We talked about this, a policy director, a communications director, because we have to have people that are going to link with the White House and the Hill to make sure we're getting our fair share of the pie that we delivered in votes. You see the thinking here? Okay, so problem number 1 is we imbue one person with too much responsibility. So the minute Karen Andre said, I can't do it, why? Because I don't know Intel that you're mentioning. Okay? I don't know. But you see this resume this person has? Again, what did I say earlier? Sometimes it's title and, blah, blah, aucun, or what have you. These things are holding us back. Back to your point, I have watched, same thing, before the campaign season started, I said, guys, millions of dollars are going to come from all over the place and rain down into the states to turn out the vote. And they're always going to realize during the election year, oh my God, we got to turn out the blacks. We got to turn out the Haitians. And if we do not organize ourselves and have a vehicle to be positioned to receive said dollars, like Bloomberg rained $400 million down, I'm not the smartest guy, in the room, guys. It's just you see it cycle after cycle. So you have to position yourself. Call for that. And what happened? 10 different organizations started overnight. Okay? Another example, I asked for people to come together to try to, like I said, build a national organization. There are people who wanted to engage the State Department around what's happening in Haiti during the election. I'm watching, boop, bloop, Association of Haitians for Advancement, Association de Bodo, like everybody's throwing up a shingle, and it's like, State Department doesn't know one from the other Oh, why? Exactly. Thank you, Leonie. Why? Parce que c'est eux-mêmes kap réussi. C'est yo même kap prend photo en bon côté chef yo pour yo di c'est yo même qui délivre. And where does that leave us? Ça fait pour maman kap mari ventre en Haïti. Ça fait pour ti moun qui pas à l'école. So our insistence on individualism versus collective power and unity is literally killing us. And if we don't get it together, and the way it always gets together, as far as I'm concerned, is when the women stand up and say, hell no, which is why I'm here today, making my appeal to you. If we do not get it together, we will continue to be the authors of our misfortune. Really quickly. So we talked about the power of networking. The reason networking is important is because you build linkages and communications and access to people and institutions that have power that you might need to leverage for yourself or for a group or for others. We talked about asset mapping. If you don't know the landscape, if you don't know that there's an Alix Contav at the Kellogg Foundation, guess what foundations do? They give out money. Most of us had never heard of Open Society before Patrick Gaspard was there. How many of us put together a meeting to go to Patrick Gaspard and try to access some of that money? How many of us thought about it? You did. If you don't asset map, and asset map in a broad way, not just the person at the top, because let me tell you something. There are young people that have no special title right now, that are at the beginning of their career, that are my entry point into many, many offices that I can get intel from. It's not always the chef. We got to get past the chef. Tout moun c'est moun. And today's Timoun might be tomorrow's Michelle Obama. There is a Michelle Obama sitting in this room right now. There is a Valerie Jarrett. There is an Oprah, Haitian Oprah, in this room right now. Okay? So let's not just look at people when they arrive. Let's be instrumental in seeing everybody as a treasure, everyone as an asset, everyone as a powerhouse in their respective sphere. Okay? I'm trying to take the shackles off our brains here. It might sound simplistic. So ultimately, networking, making sure you know your individual sphere, your network from top to bottom, and then making sure that you have asset mapped all the communities that can have consensus with you on any and every issue. And then making sure that we are actually being intentional about creating fully funded organizations, not just on the political front, right? If there is a need for more nurses, there is a Haitian American Nurses Association, but are they linked to the larger National Nurses Association? Are they linked to the Nurses Union? Are they linked to the members of Congress or anywhere that have health policy as their particular issue? You see what I'm saying? So it's a 360 linkage. That is the homework, guys. That is the homework. And if you or anyone you know are not consistently organizing, asset mapping, strategizing, and mobilizing, then you are part of the problem. I invite you to be part of the solution. This is just the beginning. There is more concrete information I want to share, and I will prepare it to be shared digitally, but I just wanted to begin the conversation, and I hope something I said today will spark, influence, and motivate you to continue to build by organizing, strategizing, and mobilizing. Thank you. Tamar, I think we had one question here. Yes, yes.
One question real quick. So to use the Texas situation as an example, right? And I'm just being a devil's advocate because for me, for instance, I'm at work, I'm working, and my phone is blowing up. Do you see what's happening in Haiti? Do you see what's happening to your Haitians? I'm like, I didn't realize what was actually going on until late that evening. So imagine the government, President Biden, and everybody in his administration getting the word, and they're already putting out fires that were happening currently or before, and we have a new fire. So using the Texas situation as an example, for me, how my brain works is how are we supposed to know that we were coming into Texas, right? I think that's how do we begin that thought process to avoid potential crises? Who was supposed to know that we were coming from South America, and how could we have prevented that or prevented potential problems at the border?
Right.
So things like that, I want us to start thinking about instead of, and that's the whole reaction thing. How do we start our thought processes, and who do we need to talk to, or who do we need to build our organization to start figuring out what the potentials could be?
So great question. And really quickly, this situation, as I mentioned, referencing the 2019 incident, is not new. That's why Gurleen has literally taken over her. Gurleen is an audio studio engineer, like really smart people, right? Like she does a whole other world of work. But being the Haitian woman that she is, gen Haitien kap sot Brésil, Chile, kap rive, la frontière Mexico, on moun relate say, hey, aren't you Haitian? You might want to come check on your people. 6 years later, this thing has taken over her life. $0, zero infrastructure, zero allies, right? So she knows, and she's been advocating, saying, hey guys, got a little issue, you know? But this goes to us paying attention, right? Because la lumière en lumière, oh, tout le monde paye attention. Then we go back. Boom, tout le monde paye attention. So this came up in 2015, in 2016, in 2017, in 2018, in 2019. It just may happen to have burst through your personal bubble. But your question should be, what can I do in my particular? Do you know who your state senator, your state representative is? Do you know who your U.S. senator is? Do you know who your congressperson is? And have you at least reached out to them?
Right. For this situation, so I guess my question is,
Well, what's the answer? Is that a yes or a no?
yes.
Okay. Okay.
I'm a part of all these organizations.
Okay.
So I have the context, but I don't have the insight from my perspective on all of these issues, right?
Right.
So how do we get that insight?
Right.
How would I have known that in 2015 this whole thing was happening?
Yeah.
Or what's going to happen in 10 years from now?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's my question.
Right. So in some ways, you can turn to your resources like the Haitian Elected Officials Network, who are representing you, whether you live in a highly dense Haitian American community. There are Haitian news sources and American news sources that have been covering this. It is our job to do the research and do the homework. I would submit to you that starting with those who have raised their hand to say they want to represent you is a good first step. And if you can't get the information, this is going to sound trite, but Google. If you literally had Googled Haitian migrants, just to start, right? Because we have to fact check. We have to research. We have to get beyond responding to sound bites that are often packaged to make you move a certain way, right? And clickbait, right? Because there are people who literally put things in, structure words in a certain way to evoke a reaction in you. So, nous pas qu'à faire quitter moun fait tête nous. And yes, I call it WhatsApp NN because it's replaced CNN. WhatsApp NN is not the most verifiable source of information. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stay. I've gone over my time, but I'm not going anywhere. We'll talk, but we have an amazing, you're gonna introduce her?
Yep.
So we have an amazing follow-up that's gonna talk about another type of power. I'm gonna stay so I can talk to you directly, sister. Is that okay? We're over time. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
So we're going to move very quickly into the next panel. Thank you again, Karen Andre, for that very insightful and not just top lines talking about the problem, but with detailed steps that each of us can take to become more engaged and more involved. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. We want to make sure we stay on time. So we're going to move directly into the next speaker, who is Miss Shannon Laguerre Manigret, right? Manigret, right. So there we go. Sorry. So I met her before she was married. I was an intern in law school for her when she was at FIAC. Currently, she is a partner at Spar and Bernstein in New York. She currently specializes in asylum withholding. Let me set the stage. So when she's giving these jewels, you understand where she's coming from, right? So she specializes in asylum, withholding of removal, Convention Against Torture, criminal immigration, deportation, defense, and federal court litigation. She has an impressive history of winning complex legal cases at her current position, as well as her previous workplace in Florida at the Immigrant Advocacy Center, where I interned and met her in Florida, in Miami. Oh, you too? Go ahead. As an immigrant rights advocate, Shannon delved into the complexities of migration and worked on protecting human trafficking victims, as well as persons forced into sexual slavery. She's assisted in the drafting, legislation here, assisted in the drafting of a bill which became Florida statute, I'm not going to read the number, you can read it yourself, establishing trafficking of people into sexual slavery as a crime, revising the RICO laws to also include sex trafficking. She then gained in-depth first-hand experience in addressing the needs of asylum seekers by representing immigrants fleeing Haiti, Cuba, China in boats as they arrived in the shores of Miami, Florida. So I read this for the sake of those of you that are online and might not have it. It is digital. Check our website. I'll come back and let you know where you can find the program to read the rest of the bios. Those of you that have your program that are here with us, you can continue to read it. Please, without further ado, Shannon, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Karen. Gosh, I have to follow you. I told you that before. I mean, you were just amazing. So again, chapeau bas to you. So another applause. So again, my name is Shannon Laguerre Mengret. There are many of you that I see out there that I know. Today, we're going to talk about Immigration 101. My job today is to talk about the evolution of the immigration laws and how it impacts Haitians in their journey here to the U.S. So next slide. And so basically we're going to be talking about the immigration policies affecting Haiti and places for advocacy. I think it's really important for us to understand the history so we can basically understand how we can move forward and be better advocates. Next slide, please. So I've been practicing immigration law almost 20 years, I can't believe it. Started teaching law also. And I remember this. I remember this big symbol, of course, the Statue of Liberty, going all the way back to 4th grade. And I remember this poem. This poem really motivated me to be where I am today. When we read this poem, it really, to me, talks about the ideals and principles of immigration. And probably some of you have already heard it, but I definitely want to just explain how important it is for me. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shores. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Next slide, please. So, you look at this and you really think about the history of immigration. People that were coming here in the early years when this country started basically were fleeing from persecution. These were people that were basically needed to be protected. And that is what immigration is about. Immigration is protecting those that have been persecuted, protecting those that have been basically that are vulnerable. And basically, let's think about it. Let's all be real about this. Immigration is about having a better life. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? And so when you see this, you know, because it's been sad, to be quite frank with you, because I've had some of, you know, my brothers and sisters talk about the fact that this makes them embarrassed, right? There's been some criticism of what's going on. And I think we've all heard that. But the reality is that that could be us. That probably once was us, our families, our ancestors. And that is why it is really important to understand immigration. That is why it's really important to understand the journey of Haitians and how it began. Next slide, please. You know, my husband and I went back and forth about this slide. I thought it was really important to talk about because, you know, we always talk about Haiti becoming the first free Black republic. We all know that, right? But I think what's interesting, especially for our children, is for people to understand that it was a haven for immigration, right? You had people going back to, you know, Haiti, immigrating over there, enslaved people that were here in the United States who were like, you know what, I've had enough of this, right? When basically, when they revolted and basically here we are now a free Black republic, you now had Christophe, Henry Christophe and Jean-Jacques Dessalines indicating, you know what, come here to Haiti. You're not gonna be oppressed here. You're free in this country. And so you had people leaving the United States to go to Haiti. You had them leaving other countries to go to Haiti. When Jewish were basically being persecuted and fleeing from the Holocaust, guess where they went? To Haiti, right? When Arabs needed to basically immigrate, they went to Haiti. And look what's happening now. Chinese, Germans went to Haiti and basically progressed. They immigrated there and basically progressed in businesses. And this is really important because even though, you know, we know what's going on now, but I think it's really important to know our history and to understand this is where we were. And as much as we talk about basically our power, and I think it's really, really important, I mean, the whole premise is igniting our power, but trying to ignite our power here and finding a way to go back to, you know, this time. You know, I love representing clients from countries with the visa waiver program. Basically, not a lot of people are immigrating from those countries, so they're allowed to come in here. You know, I want to see that for Haiti. And us really talking about that, how we can get to that position where people are comfortable in the country, in Haiti. And it looks like, you know, grim now, but I think it is something that we need to sit and talk about. Next slide, please. So first large-scale migration out of Haiti was actually during the 1700s when the slaves revolted. And so the French slave owners said, okay, it looks like we have a problem, and actually left with their slaves. And they came to the United States, and where did they actually settle? Louisiana, New Orleans, New York, Chicago, right? And so these were the places that they came to, and that really was one of the migrations that started. Next slide, please. The second wave of migration was from 1915 to 1934. Not coming here to the United States, but you had Haitians that basically decided that they needed to leave the country. The US at that particular time, this was as a result of the assassination of Villebrun Sam, the president of Haiti at that time, and Woodrow Wilson, who was the president, indicated, you know, there's business interest in Haiti, and I need to protect it. Also understood that at this particular time, that they did not want any bad influences in Haiti. And they didn't want any kind of radicalism in Haiti. So they sent their Marines over, and Haitians felt terrorized and left, Haiti and went to Cuba and Dominican Republic. And that's when you really begin to see the backlash against Haitians. That's when you really begin to see the hatred, when they started to go to Dominican Republic and Cuba. Next slide, please. So Haitian migration to the US begins with the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. That's when, there was legislation that really attracted Haitians, gave them an opportunity to be able to come to the United States. And the reason why, if you think about it, is that that's during the Vietnam War, right? Vietnam War is going on, and at this particular time, people didn't realize that it was gonna go on for so long, And at that point, what happened? We're losing workers. We're losing skilled workers, we're losing unskilled workers. And so at that time, they said, you know what, you can secure a visa, come to the United States, and that's when the brain drain really started to happen out of Haiti. You had doctors, you had lawyers, you had engineers, you had people who were tailors and seamstress actually leaving Haiti to come here and start their lives. And some of us probably have family members that left during that time in the 60s. Pardon? Well, you had Duvalier, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. So basically, at this particular time, with the Hart-Celler Act, that was really where people were coming in. Next slide.
Can you also just tie that, so political need can create an opportunity?
Right, and so basically, and just to go back to the slide, and so if you look at this, this was really, there was a need right now, right? We needed workers here in the United States. And this was where you basically start to see this migration. There's this need coming in, there's a need for workers. And at this point, basically the opportunity becomes, it's an opportunity for Haitians to come here. I hope I put it in for you. Any questions?
There was Duvalier.
There was Duvalier, and we're about to get to that. You're like ready. She's like, let me tell you. It's right there. wait, I'm going to get to that because it was in the 60s. I got it. But
They took advantage of it.
Oh, they took advantage of it. They took advantage of it. And, so thank you. So, yes, of course, absolutely, there was Duvalier. Absolutely, in the 60s. But the reality of the situation is that you had the people that were able to leave, the people that were able to secure the visas to come here were basically, yes, escaping Duvalier. But the people basically that started to come in on boats, and that's when there was an influx, right? In the 1960s that you're talking about, I agree with you 100%. Duvalier definitely played a role in it, and we're going to talk about that. The policies, that the U.S. had as a result of Duvalier. But absolutely, you had Haitians in the 60s that were leaving as a result of that act, right? The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. When you start to see a steady influx of Haitians coming into the United States is really in the 70s, in December of 1972, when that first boat came in. And so what's important is, because I really wanted to talk about the policy implications of that, is that you had Haitians coming in, and go to the next slide because I think it's really important for us to look at that. That's all you saw, right? Pictures like this, Haitians coming in, the 70s, the 80s, that's all you saw. But Haitians weren't the only people coming in on boats. You had the Cubans. And the reason, the difference, really, is that Haitians, you had Papa Doc, which, to address your point, and the Duvaliers, the U.S. made a determination that the Haitians coming in were economic or migrants, that they were fleeing from persecution, and that the Cubans coming in on boats were fleeing from persecution. And the reason why, of course, is communism. You had Papa Doc and Baby Doc, both Duvaliers, being anti-communist. And of course, we all know that Castro was, pro-communist. And so the US did not want to offend the Duvaliers by indicating that, hey, We are going to determine that you are political refugees, because that's going to offend, right, the Duvaliers. They basically are in alignment with the policy of the US at this particular time. So you had Haitians coming in, you know, with cases, just like you were talking about, terror, you know, they were terrorized and they were turned back. In 1981, you have President Reagan instituting for the first time a detention policy in order to prevent Haitians coming in, and even giving you almost like the sense that, hey, these individuals, Haitians coming in, have AIDS, and that's part of our reason for trying to intercept them before they even get to land. Next slide, please. So Karen earlier was talking about what I know as Harifah, Haitian Refugee Immigration Fairness Act of 1998. You know, this is really, really important because, again, going back to the 70s, to the 80s, when Haitians are basically routinely being denied asylum. They're making their credible claims, they're being denied asylum, and a lot of them were being returned back. Those that remained here, President Clinton came in, and you have Congress, just like Karen said before, who's in charge? You know, Congress is in charge of the immigration laws. They're the ones who basically are responsible for making those laws. And Congress basically at that point understood that we had all these refugees here from Haiti. You had an overwhelming number of Haitians that were here from the 1980s. And how do you help these individuals? And that's how Harifah came about. Harifah basically assisted, just like we were talking about. It was advocates who really fought for Harifah and made sure that you had so many people, so many Haitians that would be eligible to adjust status. Many times I used to represent them in court because there were issues that they had. But nevertheless, you know, it was such a great opportunity to be able to see that there was an acknowledgement of basically the errors of our ways, because the term itself, Haitian Refugee Immigration Fairness Act, they are categorizing these individuals that they initially said did not have asylum claims, were not refugees, as refugees in 1998. I do want to talk about the Violence Against Women Act, because even though it's not for Haitians directly, it wasn't created for them directly, but a lot of Haitians actually benefited from the Violence Against Women Act of 1994. Many Haitians that we represented, and not only Haitian women, but Haitian men too, and Haitian children, right? So it's really important to look at these laws that came out during this time and how it helped the Haitian community. We all know about temporary protected status, but of course we need to talk about it. 2010 was as a result of the devastating earthquake that happened. And then 2021, as a result of the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse, you have this being instituted. You know, and I think if people have questions, you can ask me, because I think people pretty much know what's going on with TPS. You know, the migrants that are coming in now, I have so many families calling me, and they're not eligible for TPS at this point because they came in after that crucial date of July 29th. But I do want to talk about the Haitian Family Reunification Parole Program. Not many people know about it. This was instituted in 2014, and there are people like mothers who petition for their adult children in Haiti. You have siblings who are petitioning for their siblings in Haiti, sitting in Haiti, and those programs, those visas take a long time. You're 10 years, sometimes longer if it's a sibling, right? It's now going almost on 20 years for siblings. And the Haitian Family Reunification Parole Program, basically that was instituted, said, if it's almost 2 years and you're still waiting, instead of waiting in Haiti for that interview in Port-au-Prince, we're gonna bring you here. We're gonna bring you here, we're gonna parole you into the United States. We're gonna give you the esteemed work permit to be able to work here, which is amazing. And at that point, you can get your green card here. You don't have to go back home. And again, always keep in mind that immigration is also about family unification. It's about keeping the families together. This program was going to be terminated under Trump. And you know, recently, they decided to keep it. You know, and I think it's such a great thing because I don't know how many clients I have that have really benefited from this program to be able to come to this country and to be with their loved ones without having to wait in what's going on in Haiti at this point. And so I think this is a really great program, and it really goes to talk about the importance of us working together as advocates for these kind of programs. You know, just like Karen was saying before, you know, you have these organizations that are working together and basically trying to make sure that these continue these programs, and Haitian Family Reunification Parole Program was one of them. Okay, I'm sorry, just go back. Just wanted to talk about the executive orders that happened under the Obama administration and Trump administration. People were very frustrated that Congress was not making enough laws to really address what was going on with immigration. So you now had Obama and Trump basically doing a series of executive orders. One of the most, you know, really great ones was DACA under the Obama administration that helped a lot of Haitian children here. Okay, next slide. So it's interesting, Karen, that you talked about the author of Our Own Misfortune, because it goes on to talk about some of the concerns I've seen with immigration. A lot of times I just talked about all these great programs, all these wonderful legislation that's existed for Haitian. And believe it or not, we were expecting more Haitians to actually apply for TPS, more Haitians to apply for you know, for Harifah. There was something called the Seasonal Agricultural Worker Program back in the 1980s, and you had a lot of Haitians coming here on the Farm Worker Visa Program, and a lot of Haitians didn't apply for that. And so, again, the author of Our Own Misfortune, you know, we sit back a lot of times, I ask clients, why are you not applying? Why didn't you apply for these programs? I mean, it was existent there. Harifah, there was a certain time period you needed to file that application. And a lot of times, you know, they said like this, that they're afraid. They're suspicious of the government. They don't want to give their documents, you know, and I'm astonished because then at this point, there was something that was existing for you. Go ahead. Yeah.
And those programs
yeah.
are managed by U.S. nonprofits, and how much of the publicity is made by U.S.
And that's an excellent point, which goes really to what Karen was talking about, you know, and what I really want to discuss is how do we as a collective group really make these things known, right? There's all these amazing programs that are existent for Haitians, right? And even if it's not primarily designed for Haitians, like you know, Harifah, but you have all these other, like the T visas, you know, they were just talking about the trafficking bill that I had written. There's the T visas. You know how many Haitians come in here and basically they're trafficked in for labor purposes? You know, rester avec, you know, you have those, and then we talk about the T visas, we talk about, you know, the S visas. I used to work basically with the boats that were coming in, and there were so many people who witnessed, you know, people dying or who were part of this criminal enterprise, and they worked with the government. Those individuals are eligible for S visas. And so,
Can you say what the T visa is?
the T visa is a trafficking visa, right? You need to be able to show that you were actually a victim of severe trafficking, right? And so a lot of people, when they come to me, you know, they're talking to me about asylum, which is what they know, right? That's all they know. And then when they start telling me more details and I sit down with them, I see that they are eligible for the T visa, right? Some people are eligible for the U visa, which means that you're a victim of a crime. And, you know, no one wants that, right? But the reality is that people are victims of crimes. And so they're eligible for the U visa. The S visa is almost like, we call it the snitch visa, right? And so, that's what I call it. You know, I do criminal immigration, so I don't have this with Haitians, but criminal immigration, and a lot of times basically, if you are working with the government, if you are providing information to the government that's helping them with a criminal enterprise, then at that time you're eligible for this S visa. And like I said, you know, I do criminal immigration. It's usually people who are drug traffickers, and then I'm able to get them the S visa. So that's where we go from there. I do want to talk about also naturalization and voting, because I think it's really important Just like I said, there's a lot of Haitians not applying for these programs. A lot of Haitians that do have their green card don't apply for naturalization. And that to me is lost power there, right? Because it's lost power. And it again speaks to Karen's point, the excellent point that she made, an author of our own misfortune, right? Because if you actually apply for citizenship, then you're able to vote. And that is how you have your voice heard, right? Your ability to be able, as a collective group. I want to talk about, and I think you could go to the next slide because it really talks about, next slide. Sure. Oh, we can go back.
Can we unpack why asylum applications
Oh, yeah.
are denied at the lowest rates more than any other?
We could be here for a while, but I won't do that because I think I have a time limit.
We didn't hear the question. She'll repeat it. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Right. Why is it that basically the asylum applications are denied at the lowest rates more than any other nationality? So that was actually through the Associated Press that I saw the statistic, and I believe it. I absolutely believe it. And I think the reality of the situation is because they're not represented correctly. I don't know how many times I've had Haitians come to me with asylum applications. By the time they get to me, they're in court, right? And just what, so by the, oh, denied at the highest rates. I'm sorry, more than any other nationality. I apologize. That was a mistake. Okay, so.
No, that's fine, but I saw what you really meant.
Okay. So let me address it. Okay, so let me answer it. So basically, you have Haitians coming to me sometimes, back in the day when I was in Miami, and even now to a certain extent, where they came in and I'm like, okay, so tell me about your asylum application. And they're like, well, sal di su aplicación. And then I'm like, but okay, do you know? And they didn't know. Or they would have a recording, and basically they would play for me. And so they had people that were actually notarios doing these asylum applications for them. The insanity of it is that some of them actually had really good asylum applications had they really sat with someone who was experienced and who would be able to help them. And that's the sadness of it.
May I add one thing?
Sure, please.
The one thing you mentioned before, they are economic.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we all know that we do not have a asylum for economic reasons.
Correct. And some of them are economic, but when they really actually, because there's different levels, there's different ways that you can actually get asylum. And so there are a lot of times when they're telling you about their story, and it takes time to sit down with someone. If you're doing it quick, you're not going to be able to get the story. But if you take your time, you will find an asylum application. You will find an asylum claim. Many of them have it. I have represented many women who were raped basically, and sometimes basically when you start delving into it, you see the politics in it. Because remember, rape is basically a weapon, that is used, in politics in certain countries, right? Like these third world countries like Haiti, etc. And how many times have I argued that and have been successful on that? Right? Because they were targeted because they were women, right? And because they possibly knew someone that was involved in politics and have been able to do it, right? And been successful on that many times.
Shannon.
Go ahead.
A notario, in practicing immigration law, are these offices that people would set up, Haitian OVNI, and they would literally, in our heyday, literally write one badly written anglais marron story on a paper and give it to 10 different people.
Oh, yeah.
And charge them $1,500. I literally was in immigration court with a client, and the judge looked at me and said, I read this exact same story from 3 other people this morning. So in terms of being the authors of our own misfortune, just setting up a business, taking the money, if you're gonna do it right. Right? But yes.
We're really short on time, but I want to underscore that by saying an Haiti gen notaire, and they have a role. So when you come and you see a notario or a notaire that says they're going to help you, you believe that because that's the system you come from, and you understand that this person has legal authority to do what they're doing.
And it's interesting because a lot of time. And let me tell you, that's an excellent point. But the reality is that there are nonprofit organizations. You know, I used to work at FIAC, right? American.
Come on, it's not that, I think that cost, I agree with her that cost is an issue.
Of course,
I think that access to some of these agencies is another issue.
I agree.
Because they're not very easily accessible.
I think because they have long waiting
they're
lines.
overwhelmed,
Yep.
So that must be good. And I also think that in terms of naturalization, you have, you know, we need to deconstruct who we are as Haitians. Some folks cannot read or write, and there are no special provisions for them.
Unless they've had their green cards for over 15 years or over the age of 55. So there are exceptions to that.
They need to act, I mean,
But then it comes down to information.
exactly.
Correct.
And also cost, as she said, the notarios, and sometimes people, last week I spoke to a couple, they didn't know if the person was a real lawyer. And I said, if the company is called so-and-so multi-service, it ain't no lawyer.
Correct. Correct.
So they don't even know they do.
But then it comes down again to access to information and how we as a community, as a collective group, really basically advise these individuals the importance of basically having adequate, zealous representation. And again, I agree with you that you have these nonprofit organizations that are overwhelmed at this particular time. But even us as Haitian immigration attorneys, really providing pro bono services also. I mean, this is part of what we need to do for the bar anyway, and looking to do that as a group. So I think that's really important. So I think I'm out of time. So you guys,
we are almost out of time. We're gonna do question and answer after all of the speakers. So we'll have a mic. Everyone will get a chance to ask questions of all of the speakers that have gone today. So I'm gonna ask you to hold your questions so that we can get back on the program.
So quickly, I just want to say, because this is what, Karen had wanted me, and she addressed this also, really important to understand, because a lot of people will come to me and say like this, immigration. But there's the Department of Homeland Security, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services is under there. Where I go to court all the time is the Executive Office for Immigration Review, which is under Department of Justice. If you're going to be speaking, it's really important to know the difference between these entities, and you could certainly review that based on the fact that I'm running out of time. And we can go to the last slide. Okay. I think we addressed some of them, but I do want to talk about being a change maker, a decision maker. I think Karen kind of talked about that before, engaging in your community. And as people, Haitian brothers and sisters, I think it's really important for us to run for office, and also for us to basically work in some of these organizations, the immigration agencies, Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Department of State. It's important to have Haitians in these positions being able to really help you. I think it's so essential. Because when I am in court and I have someone that is Haitian, that is opposing counsel, to me it makes a difference, right? Because I'm able to communicate with them and understand. When I'm basically dealing with passport issues with Haitians and the officer is Haitian, makes a fundamental difference. And we really need to look at, not everybody has to be an attorney, right? Not everybody has to be a doctor or a nurse, etc., but certainly can work for these organizations and really be a change maker. And I think it's important that we really look at that and also look at running for office. All right, thank you.
How are we feeling, ladies? Learning lots of stuff, taking good notes? I don't see everybody taking notes. I hope you guys are keeping it to memory. So we're gonna, thank you. So we are getting ahead of me here, Stefan. So we're going to share the slides that you've seen here, so you'll have this information. We will have a Q&A with the speakers, so you'll be able to ask a few more questions, and they're going to be here around, so you'll be able to have some one-on-one time to connect with them if there's something that you haven't fully formulated and want to get a chance to ask them. So to try to get us back on schedule, I'm going to move right into the next speaker, and then we'll do some housekeeping before we take a break, and we'll thank our sponsors and all of that. Thank you, sponsors. I can't list you right now, but we're going to go into the next speaker, Gurleen Joseph. She has dedicated her life to bringing awareness to issues that affect us all, locally and globally, such as immigration, socioeconomic and racial justice, domestic violence, child sexual abuse, and other human rights abuses. She is the creator of Tales from the U.S.-Mexico Borderlands and Beyond, an immigration information session focusing on Black immigrants at the Borderlands and Beyond. She is also the co-creator of Faith in Action, an immigration justice movement in Southern California, a 4-part immigration program for both impacted communities and allies. She is the co-founder and executive director of the Haitian Bridge Alliance, also known as The Bridge, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, which means they need money to do their work. A 501c3 nonprofit organization that advocates for fair and humane immigration policies and provide migrants and immigrants with humanitarian, deportation defense, legal, social services, with a particular focus on Black immigrants from the Caribbean and African diaspora and the Haitian community, women and girls. It's in the program. We're also going to share the program. It's digital. You can find it. Go to our website. I'm sure the link is there. And if you have it, you can read the rest of her bio. I want to make sure she has the maximum amount of time. For those of you in here, please make sure that you're keeping your masks on. We're trying to make sure that we stay COVID safe and protect each other so that we can all go home safely to our families. So make sure you're keeping your mask on, and I will put mine on as soon as I'm done speaking. Gurleen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Honneur, respect. Whew, I don't know how to follow these amazing women. I'm getting very emotional right now. I am a big crybaby. But to stand before you today, as I look in this room, and I'm seeing the melanin that is popping. I am not only proud to be in a room full of Haitian women, but I am excited as how we are going to ignite our power. What does igniting our power means? When we look at what's happening under the bridge, and my sister mentioned, what just happened? I received a call. This has been happening for six and a half years. And when Miss Karen was talking and she mentioned 2019, I said, I called her in 2015, and she stood with me. And as we hear about funding and all of this, I am not proud to say that I had to risk my life. I had to tell my husband, who's not a Haitian man, baby, you need to pull out your 401k. Because my people are at the US-Mexico border. That was 2015, under President Obama. And I had to make a choice. Am I going to continue ice skating for my daughter, or put gas in my car to drive an hour and a half to go to the border? That was a choice I had to make. Because when I arrived, I saw myself. You saw the picture, and we've seen the video. I was under the bridge before it hit the news. I am going to ask my brother to play a quick video of what the journey looks like. For some of us, I'm sure we have families and friends and relatives. In 2015, most of us didn't have anyone at the border. In 2021, Every single person I have spoken to had a family, a friend,
Gap.
a cousin at the border.
Underneath the soaring jungle canopy, migrants from around the world risk death crossing the jungle in a desperate bid to reach the US and Canada. They have no map and no instructions on how to make it through one of the world's most dangerous migration routes.
J'aimerais passer un message à d'autres Haïtiens.
I would like to send a message to anyone who is thinking of doing this route. It's very dangerous. If I knew this, I wouldn't have done it.
Many migrants spend a week or even 2 on this trail before they reach a village and safety. But these journeys started long before. Migrants from Asia, the Middle East, and Africa flew into Ecuador or Brazil.
Why did I play this little clip? Those are the realities of the people who made the journey. You saw they had to go through the jungle, to the mountain of Colombia, 10 different countries. And my sister earlier spoke about how Haiti was the welcoming place for all people. And in Haiti, we used to have this saying, Juif errant. Oh, est-elle semblable à un Juif errant? What does that mean? For the Jews, they were moving from place to place, searching for a home. I am witnessing Haitian errant. Affaire Juif errant, c'est le passé. Kounya, c'est un Haïtien errant que nous y. When we look at root causes, why Haitians are moving from place to place in search of hope, chercher la vie, in search of life, because they cannot stay home. Brother, can you play that other little piece for me? Okay, so I took those videos with my phone. And as you see this little chicken wire, that's what was separating me from those people. Once again, I came face to face with myself under the bridge. And as I am looking at each and every one of you here, I saw your faces under the bridge. How are we going to ignite our powers to make sure when those things happen, we don't react with the emotional, oh, te malé del Rio, te malé del Rio. The week before that, it was El Paso. If you had talked to me 4 months ago, we had 4,000 people in Tijuana. There were no cameras. There were no news. We were comfortable. And we continue to be comfortable today because it's no longer on the news. And when people were calling me and say, I want to come to Del Rio, and I'm telling them, the area is closed. But you are there. Yes, but the area is closed. What do you need? I need to ignite the community's power in Miami, in New York, in Chicago, in Atlanta, because when they release those people to me and Shirley, we have to send them to those places, and who's going to receive them? Who's going to feed them? Who's going to provide housing for them? Igniting our power is not under the bridge. And we see, I am so emotional, and I am upset, I am frustrated, I am pissed off at our community. We have to be accountable for our misfortune, we must hold our elected officials accountable.
Yes.
2 weeks prior to the Rio, I sent a toolkit asking, I need signatures from community members, from people, to tell President Biden to stop deporting Haitians. Not one. I asked, sign petition. We have been writing letters to President Trump. We sent the first stop deportation using Title 42, and I will ask the attorney to explain to people what Title 42 is, to President Trump. How many Haitian organizations signed the letter? We had over 300 organizations, 3 Haitian organizations signed the letter. As I continue to be on the border and under the bridge, making the sacrifices, powerless most of the time. As we fought for TPS, not an extension, but a redesignation, and people looked at me at my face and told me it was impossible. If we can just get an extension, what is redesignation? Tamar. Explaining to them the extension will allow the 60,000 people who already had it, but I have encountered 100,000 plus people, and I must make sure we have protections for them.
Repeat that. Repeat that. And why you work so hard to get this administration elected, repeat that.
Go to election, Tamar.
Repeat that. Repeat that.
Designation will allow the 60,000 people who already had it. Extension. And when we said we need redesignation, even people within the community say, what is this? Right now. But as I saw and encountered over 100,000 people, we realized that extension will not benefit our community fully. So as we stand here today, it was a long-fought battle due to racism because they handed TPS to Venezuela. Handed TPS to Venezuela. Handed TPS to Burma. We had to fight. 5 o'clock in the morning meetings. Tama petit, bagay la red. And building power, and as Karen was mentioning, for the first time, we were able to have meetings with the administration.
That part.
Building power is when Gurleen is always the only one in the room, and if I fall, I have no one to catch me.
Yes,
and I have to say, kote Malen Basye. Kote so-and-so. Kote so-and-so. I am younger. I may not know all the people who were there before. So as I'm reaching out, and for the first time, the administration agreed to have a meeting with Haitian leaders and continue to ignite that little power to make sure Haitians are at the table, because if we are not at the table, we are on the menu. And we are not even the main dish. We are barely the side dish. And to believe that Haiti is one of the countries the most having briefings within any administration. So how are we reacting? How are we igniting our power? How do we move forward? President Biden ran on Build Back Better, on saving the soul of America, but we, the Haitian community, we don't have a space to build back from. We have to start building where we are. The power that the Haitian Ladies Network has built, how are we going to mobilize and organize and get the result that we need? Just like the Jews and the Cubans and the X and the Ys, why must we always be fighting to be recognized? I no longer come to a space looking for a seat. I will bring my own damn seat. And I will flip that table. As a daughter of Haiti, I think each and every one of us should enter into a space, just say, oh, Haitien mieux. Point barre. No explanation needed. But we are not in that space yet. I have a few call to actions. Combien? Oh, je get that toujours. So, but let's talk about mapping and organizing, strategizing, and mobilizing. How many of us here are ready to be mobilized? Are we ignited to do the work that needs to be done, my sister, so that in 2022, we don't have to stay scratching, where are we? I have calls to action now. I don't have time for craziness, I'm tired. I have gained 50 pounds, and my mother called me and said, Petite, je suis sur le parler. They said, my mother, my family, they have no filter. Et Galit, when they were no interview, ou pas de soutien. Haitian mothers, right? I remember May 29th, May 21st, when they finally redesignated CPS for Haiti, 150,000+ people will be eligible to apply for CPS. More complicated than before because of fair resettlement, because the majority of the people were in Brazil, in Chile, in other places. So you need to have an attorney, parler na notario. And we're talking about building power. We don't have a Haitian woman in Congress. Say it. Say it. Maman me dit m'pas faire politique. We don't have a Haitian person in Congress. So là nous besoin font bagay dans Congrès, c'est un prix souple pour nous pour mener marché mandé. Igniting our power, organizing, mobilizing, doing the right thing. Legal services. Pour mon haïtien qui sorti tout partout, moi-même, moi vini ici dans privilège, monter à avion, descendre New York à l'école. Al California, one day, why am I in California? I was running from home, but tired of the New York cold, right? But why am I in Orange County of all places, South Orange County? When I arrived, I was the only black person in my church. Why am I there? It wasn't until 2015 that I realized I was so close to the border for such a time as this. So Haitian Ladies Network, in our privilege, what are we going to do? For over a year, I was trying to partner with ALA and NBA to create a legal service to be able to provide pro bono for folks. A year. Eh bien, on met by explication pour moi. National Bar Association. Yes. So National Bar, c'est parce que moun noir tant que nous, we couldn't be a part of the bigger picture. Just we still can be a part of the bigger picture. They created their own thing. Now they have partnered with the Haitian Bridge Alliance to provide pro bono legal support. However, we just launched a couple of days ago. What happened? The first day, I had a part-time volunteer who agrees to answer the call. So people started calling. I have a part-time, I will repeat, a part-time volunteer.
Not full-time yet.
A part-time volunteer who says, bon, Sam Cafe. I said, answer the call. So we are looking for people to staff that hotline. Because when you call, so somebody can answer and be able to connect the people to an attorney. So this is the time we ignite our powers to say, I have so and so, or I myself can volunteer 2 hours a week, 2 hours a day, because I have a staff of 7. I will repeat. I have a staff of 7. And I would like to ask Shirley to get up 1 quick minute. I know you look fabulous, honey, but get up. Madam. So, Shirley Sky is an artist who has been promoting the culture of Haiti, but when I call, most people don't answer. She always answers. She was with me in El Paso, and in Del Rio, and in Tijuana before the flashlights. So how are we going to ignite our powers to get results? We need President Biden to uphold his promises to our community. He came and he was leaning or bending or whatever. Now we need action. Action speaks louder than words. For those who are asking what happened to the people from under the bridge, 7,400 of them have been deported. I will repeat. 7,400 of them have been deported, including pregnant women and babies, even babies who were born under the bridge or immigration detention. Here, AI US citizens have been deported back to Haiti, or should I say sent to Haiti. We have 5-7 who are still in CBP custody. That's why when you're trying to find your family members, you cannot find them because they are in this limbo period where they are neither deported, released, nor already sent to ICE.
5 or 7,000.
Pardon me?
5 or 7,000.
7 have been deported. 1,000. So we have, between. So what are we going to do? We are going to call the administration to stop deportation. Do we have the power to do that? Yes. Are we going to do that? Yes. Okay. Are we going to use our influences to make sure that our allies and co-conspirators are on the same page to make sure we get what we need? Are we going to organize? Can Gurleen organize by herself? No. Do I need you and each and everyone to come in this fight? It is a fight. It is a war. Because not only that the US is deporting Haitians, Mexico, even our Cuba is deporting Haitians. We talked about the legal line. We are going to give you Shirley's email address, and I'm expecting each and everyone to email her to ask how we can volunteer, how we can ignite our power to make sure our people are taken care of, right? And then mapping and leveraging our allyship. When this thing just happened, our Afghan community members reached out and say, we want to stand in solidarity with you. Earlier, Gomon kids say, oh, no, no. That was the answer I got. When they are receiving Afghan and deporting Haitians, that is the time we make sure we strengthen our allyship with the Afghan community. So the Haitian Bridge Alliance will be releasing our Haiti-Afghan coalition in collaboration. The Haitian Bridge Alliance will be releasing our Haiti-Afghan coalition in support with the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Center to make sure that we use our collective strength and power to welcome all people with dignity. And as I tell people, I went to the border because my brothers and sisters were there. But when we arrived, people from Cameroon, Eritrea, Ethiopia, we stayed for everyone because that's what Haiti represents. So the Haitian Bridge Alliance, with many other Black-led organizations, will also be releasing the Cameroonian Advocation Network so that we can too win TPS for the Cameroonian brothers and sisters. We are working with the Mauritanian community to make sure we get protection for them, and we are pushing for all majority Black countries to get the same welcome, the same protection as all people. I know there's a lot. So, October 14th, we are asking for a call to action to ask President Biden, I almost said Trump, Lord help me. President Biden, Vice President Harris, Secretary Mayorkas, Ron Klein, Michelle Sisson, who is the U.S. ambassador to Haiti. Oh, she's still there. So to make sure we get the support and protection for them to stop deporting little Haitian babies and their parents and young men and young women who have been forced to leave Haiti partly due to U.S. policies. Igniting our power to get Haiti back on track. We are tired of this internal violence that my sister Solange will be talking about. And we are tired of the external violence by the international community that keeps on making our young men and women, our pregnant women, all of those people leaving home in search of life. And then they turn around and tell us, don't come. The nerves. From Secretary Mayorkas, whom himself, his parent, fled twice. Once fled Europe to the Caribbean, to Cuba, then fled Cuba to the United States, brought him with them, and then turned around and say, don't come. And we understand that anti-Black racism is a part of the system. And that is why when we saw those pictures under the bridge, it reminded us of slavery. It reminded the African-American descendant of enslaved people and got our emotions going to say no more. And I stand before you as a Haitian national, as an American citizen, as a Haitian American black woman, descendant of enslaved people, to say enough is enough. Is our blood moving right now? My Haitian women, are we seeing what's been happening, and are we ready to ignite our power to make the changes that we need? Because when we have Karine André, Karine Jean-Pierre, 2-3 people within an administration that are pushing behind closed doors, which we cannot really see, but what can they really do by themselves? On dit que la critique est aisée, mais l'art est difficile. On est capable de dire français tout, oui? I know my time is almost over. So, October 14th, we have a national call to action. We need you on Twitter, on Facebook, on wherever. We need you on the streets to make sure we are heard. We will continue those actions until we get results. I'm going to give you Shirley's email address so you can all go to her so that you can tell her, this is what I can do. I have 2 hours, I speak French, because all the documents are in French that needs to be translated into English. You don't speak French, parlez créole pi red. Nous besoin interprète qui capable faire ça. Qui ça nous capable faire? Avocat yo. Relais pour nous capable participer in the legal hotline. Moun qui gen organisation, qui gen tout bagay. Madame Léonie, Saint-La, we need you to come with us so that we can ignite this power, so that we can make sure people are getting the service that they need. So, nous avons 2 bagages qui vraiment connectent nous in this room. One, nous tous c'est haïtiens ou bien Haitian descent ou monde qui gen descendant haïtien. 2, nous c'est immigrants. So, immigration c'est une bagage central que we have to deal with. Que c'est medical care, education, housing. If you do not have the proper document, you cannot rent an apartment. You cannot get the health care that you need. You cannot get anything because unfortunately, our everything is connected to our immigration status. For those of us who are privileged to have a green card, a citizenship, qui fait ici, this is the time for us to really stand up and say, l'union fait la force. The empilme chay palou that we talk about, this is the time. And one more thing. People said to me, so what are you doing? I said, look at our Dessalinienne. What does it say? Dans nos rangs, point de traître. Du sol, soyons seuls maîtres. Marchons unis, marchons unis. How many of us are really working in unity for the well-being of you and I, of us and our community here, and for our country in Haiti? How many? How many of us are willing to put ourselves on the line? Because Karine André cannot do it by herself. How many? After we leave Haitian Ladies Network and we go to Miami, to New York, to Haiti, to wherever, how are we going to ignite the study, the masterclass that we just have, to make sure we get the results? So I am expecting, demanding, and requesting that we push forward to get the result that we need. Merci beaucoup.
I'm gonna ask you to stay standing and give a round of applause to all 3 speakers, because they understood the assignment today. I'm going to have you guys come this way. Are we ready for the Q&A? Okay. So I'll have you guys come join me on the stage. We have a gentleman walking around with a microphone. I'm going to ask, listen up, ladies. We go to these conferences. All right, listen up, ladies. If you need to have a conversation, I'm going to ask you to take it outside. So we go to these conferences, and everyone's motivated, ignited, feeling energized, and they feel the need to give a 10-minute monologue before they get to their question. I'm pausing because I want you to hear that. We don't have that kind of time. Our speakers are here. They will answer your questions. They will also be around to answer other questions. I'm going to ask you to do 2 things before you get to your question. I don't want to have to cut anybody off. So I'm going to ask you to say your name, where you're here from, and get right to the question. A very specific question, and say who the question is for. See, So before we get started, Karen has a couple of comments, and then we will, can you raise your hand with the mic? So we're going to start, he's going to start in the back and work his way forward. We're going to try to get through as many questions as quickly as possible. Your son. Oh, your son. Hello? Can you all hear her? Yeah. Here, go ahead. No.
Hello? Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, great. Really quickly. So let's take Haitian Bridge Alliance as an opportunity to organize, strategize, and mobilize. This woman has gained a PhD in immigration law, migration policy in the last 6 years. Not because she's gone to school, it's been a lived experience PhD. Did you know what TPS was 6 years ago? Did you know what Title 42 was 6 years ago? So she literally dove into the deep end of the pool, l'a nage pou l'sorti. Li lè pou nou bali, Jarrett, li lè pou nou kampe derrière li. So if you're looking for a way to help, I asked Gurleen, many people were asking me during the week of the migration issue, what can they do to help? I said, go donate to Haitian Bridge Alliance so she can hire staff. 3 days later, I asked Gurleen, have you seen new donations? No. I'm not saying give $1,000, $1 million. Give what you can, because each dollar will go to helping her build infrastructure, build capacity. That's what we need. No more volunteers, no more part-time. We have to have full-time staff to do the work. She gave you a taste of how much work is involved. When people call, because there's 1,000 people calling her all, and it's just her, and it's just Shirley. God bless them. So let us put our money where our mouth is, because not everybody can stop their lives and go organize, and you have lives, you have bills, you have families too. But if you're looking for a place to either put your treasure or tithe your time, no excuses. And then we have not talked about the root causes of the migration. The root cause of the migration, c'est la caille. C'est souffrance, se nous ak frère nous la caille. C'est ça que fait y prendre bateau, c'est ça que fait y marcher, and we have to raise and elevate the awareness and that conversation as well. Okay? So didn't want to lose sight of that. But again, organize, strategize, build infrastructure, build actual organizations and institutions that we're going to leverage to use our power and make a difference. Got it? Okay.
We're going to start with a question in the back, right here.
Hi, good afternoon. It's such a beautiful time to hear you ladies and also insert some Haitian lady power inside of me.
Your name?
My name is Regine Laguerre, and I am an attorney in DC. I have one asylum case pro bono, Guerline. So this is for you to tell you I'm with you, and I have signed up through the MBA portal last week, but I do understand like the infrastructure may not be set up, you may not have staffing yet, but part of staffing and the infrastructure, my question for you was how are you going about, or how is Haitian Bridge Alliance going about getting the social media out? Because, you know, whatever I see, I'm texting my cousins, I'm like, hey, you know, you can translate Yo Miami, you know, they're here and there. But after that week where we were seeing the migrants and we were feeling distressed, it got quiet. It's still in my mind. L'Union Suite moved on too, you know, with the jokes and everything. So how is social media continuing, or how are you partnering with larger social media conglomerates to get the messaging out, to get the articles out? You know, whatever it is, CFR, partnering with other institutions so that there is more visibility to have the money to get the work done.
The lavaliers have been turned off in order to avoid feedback, so we'll use this mic.
That sounds good. Merci un peu, sister. It's been difficult. As I mentioned, we are a team of 7. My communication person is also my legislative person is also my assistant. And so therefore we are looking for people to join our team. As I called my sister and I said, do you know a good person who can do policy? Because Gurleen can no longer do policy. Do you know a person, a good PR person, a good communication person that can join us? Right now, we don't have it. So that is why, while we are under the bridge, everybody's putting statements and raising money. We can't do it because we have to be under the bridge. So the building capacity comes in. So really looking for people to join the team, to help us raise the fund, to be able to no longer have volunteers, but hire a PR person, hire a policy person, and hire somebody who makes sure that those information comes out. One more thing, a lot of misinformation happening. How did the people get under the bridge? Misinformation. People have been suffering for so long. When they tell them, allez en bas bridge là, you'll get protection, everybody went under the bridge. So this kind of things, we are working also to create PSAs, to create informational graphics to make sure that people get the proper information that they need.
Your Instagram page is a great place to keep up with their work that they're doing, and they do pump out infographics on there. Is there any other social media home that you have?
Facebook, Twitter. Yes, I would love for you to lead the LinkedIn.
Capacity.
Shirley, connectez avec lui, il va aider nous dans LinkedIn. But don't be afraid. I'm not going to tell you to do it. But these are the type of work that we need to keep on going. And I also see Gabrielle Apollon. I need to recognize Gabrielle Apollon, who has been in this fight with us. Actually, le nou ap fait meeting in the White House. Moi dis Gabrielle, ou met al monitor. Thank you, sister, for your work.
Hi, my name is Sabine Philippe, and I am the coordinator of an organization called LADAN, League of Haitian American Diaspora Alliance Network. And a lot of people know about us, what we did May 18th and June 18th, both in Washington, D.C. and New York. So, Karen, my question for you is...
So y'all brought my mama to the White House.
Yes, your mother was wonderful.
Outside the White House, outside my window.
And your mother...
On May 18th.
And your mom was also in New York with us, and that was amazing. And people said, wait, don't you have a daughter working at the White House and you're talking about the Biden administration? It's like, hell! She said, my mouth is mine, so I want to speak. I don't care. Okay,
The bigger lesson there is that you have to have inside and outside baseball. You need a Malcolm chien engagé and you need a Martin negotiator. You clear? We talked about strategy, right?
And I'd rather be the chien engagé myself. But anyway. Okay, so Karen, just right now you said that the problem, that wasn't my question, but I want to take a ride on that one, yes. You said the problem was in Haiti. And
root causes of migration.
Root cause of migration starting in Haiti. I would respectfully disagree with that.
Okay.
The reason being, I think the root cause is the United States of America.
Well,
their policies.
But their policies where?
Their policies.
In where? In Haiti.
In Haiti.
Okay.
But their policies in Haiti, yes, but it's not the people of Haiti.
Okay.
They're partially maybe a quarter of it.
So the corruption that we
That's
do.
the United States.
Is all so the Haitians who are engaged in corruption are only doing it at the behest of the United States?
How they engage in corruptions?
We can get into the how, right?
But okay, so my question was.
Hold on.
Yes.
Let's not pretend if you have 100% blame that we can't own 1% of it. Come on. Okay?
Sure.
So let's not split hairs, but if there's gonna be solution, let us own whatever our small part is, while we then hold accountable and mobilize and organize and strategize for the other side of the equation. That's all I'm saying. Okay?
Okay, so my question was, it's regarding, I think you were talking about how we're going to know about it. Somebody asked under the bridge, how we're going to know and you mentioned, what are we going to do about it? Well, how are we going to mobilize to go after the U.S. policies that are against Haiti and keeping us in this situation? So we need to really think about it. It's not the how we're going to know about it. It's what are we going to do in order to stop this nonsense.
So what has your asset mapping? And I'm presuming you have an organization, you've organized, you've strategized, you've asset mapped. So tell me, you've done 2 protests. And I'm not against protests, but I have limited expectations of what protests can achieve these days. But you still have to mobilize people. So what has your asset mapping and your strategy resulted in? Or your plan? Okay. Because we have to look at ourselves. And I'm not saying you don't have it, but we got to strategize. Okay.
Hi everybody, I'm Velina Charlier from Nopapdomi, Haiti. Okay. And I happen to be very shy. I have a very specific question for you, Miss Andre. Okay. We are very often called to the U.S. Embassy, meeting with very senior officials. Mm-hmm. I happen to have a meeting next week. Mm-hmm. And I feel like for the past 3 years, I have been saying everything and going around and around and around and saying the same things. Yeah. I think the problem is corruption and impunity is Haiti's biggest problem. Okay. The fact that we have a mafia state, that we are led by the mafia, and U.S. policy towards Haiti. So if you were in my shoes, what would you tell them?
Tell who? What I tell who?
I'm meeting with, I'm going to tell.
Okay, what I would tell the U.S. actors.
Yes.
So complex problems require complex, multi-layered solutions, right? There's no one thing, and there's no one action. And remember, we talked about having realistic timetables, and I gave you examples of affluent people here in this country that still cannot move the needle. Just to center us as an immigrant community that is still building its power, the road and the hill is long and steep. Anyone who thought just the election was the end of the road for us is politically naive, okay? And what I will not do is insult your intelligence and engage in platitudes. It's ultimately frustrating how many times, how many doors we have to knock on. over and over saying the same thing again. But we know we don't have the luxury to stop. Before I get to what I would say, I'd like to talk about what we must do, back to this whole thing. We have to assess when we get these meetings, if the people in the room are ceremonial folks, just sent, right? Or if they're decision makers. But in order to assess that, you have to be able to know the landscape or talk to people on the inside who can tell you, si c'est un tel, pas occupé, pas gaspiller ton. Ou bien si c'est un tel, ou bien mande pour un tel. So, les ap di, retire tête ou la Maison Blanche là, that's less access that you may have pour yon moun an dedans, kap djou kouman pou gérer bagay yo. So, first and foremost, if we had a fully funded National Haitian American Elected Officials Network with an executive director that's doing that homework for you, that can brief you. You don't need briefs on what's happening in Haiti because you're the subject matter expert, but you need briefing on how to deliver the points to these people, right? Because I'm sorry, the morality, oh my God, this is wrong, you should fix it. Slavery was legal in this country. You're applying a moral argument to a morally bankrupt country. No lies told, right? So we have to, so before we even talk about what to say, it's what can we say and do that's actually going to have impact? Because telling them it's wrong, they don't care. It's wrong for 5-year-olds to be massacred in their classroom. They don't care. So that's why you have to study, what do they care about? Who does have the power to ring their bell? It's not just money, but again, each election, each political season brings a different set of actors that are in power, okay? Like I said, the White House, the House, and the Senate are in the hands of the Democrats right now. If we can take the emotionality out of it and say, 2 years from now, it might not be the case. So those who are in leadership in those places on the Hill, those donors, right, who give to these things, who are our set of allies that can call and really apply pressure while we are still doing the meetings, but it's not just going into there and doing the meetings, because you are doing an important job. You are raising awareness, you are educating, and you cannot stop, as tiring as it can be, because there might be someone in there that will finally listen or who has the influence to pick up the phone. But while you are doing that, okay, if we had a national intel or international intel, or if we had, linkages with big money interests or leveraging our labor unions to say, hey, you guys are gonna see a decrease in union dues if we don't see some action by the National Intel Labor Organization to call the West Wing. See, it's so much bigger than what you do in one meeting. So we need people on the inside telling you how to structure your argument. We need people on the outside protesting. We need people going to the United Nations. We need people coming to the White House, but we also need people in Capitol Hill. We need people in labor. We need people who have big money interests at Open Society helping fund the Gurleens of the world. So it's a global strategy. So what I would say, to your point, is their needs, and I've already said it, and Patrick Gaspard is saying it, and what I was trying to seize upon between tragedies, between the earthquake and the migrant issue, the narrative I was trying to organize around is, and seeding these conversations, Leonie is my witness, when Mayorkas comes to visit Miami, okay, you wanna come visit? This is the time we change the relationship between the US and Haiti and US's policies in Haiti. That needs to be the drum. We cannot have a top-down relationship anymore. There must be parity, there must be equity, and we must start to talk about how we actually have a partnership. We will not accept anymore, right, for the interventionist policies or the horrible actors, whether it's at the State Department, national security policy, the whole approach to how Haiti is addressed from a foreign policy issue must change with recommendations of what that looks like. That's the drum so it's not even, I'm gonna come brief you, we're going to come and give action items of what we need to see. We're going to demand different policies of the USAID. No, we need answers on why guns are coming into our country. We have to turn, right, the spotlight back on them. So this is a very simple answer to a very complex, but the point is, the origin of this is that there must be a fundamental change in U.S. foreign policy towards Haiti, and it starts now. Does that make sense?
So we're completely out of time for questions, and what I'm gonna do is listen. Don't get mad. I've talked to our. I'm gonna work with you. So I've talked with my IT back here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna stack the questions, and I really need to cut out all the editorializing. Gotta do it, or else we're not gonna get through as many questions. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask you to stand if you have a question for Shannon specific on immigration.
Okay, my question is real quick. Is there a network of Haitian American lawyers?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, oh, thank you. There is, actually. Sure. There's Haitian American Lawyers Association in Miami. I mean, we were a part of it. Haitian American Lawyers Association in New York. They play a big role. So basically there are Haitian American Lawyers Association. There's not a national. Hi, how are you?
Oh, okay.
Say that again?
No, there's not a national one.
Oh, okay. There's different chapters.
And they're not linked as well as they could be.
They
Would you
could
agree?
be linked better. I think there was one in Chicago that had started actually by a trial attorney. So basically they could certainly do more, but there's not a national, but that's a really good point.
They're all busy working, obviously. Yeah.
One more question for Shannon. I'm asking questions for Shannon. I'm stacking them together. Go ahead.
Is there an increase, or have you noticed that there are more, I guess, what do you guys call them, businesses for Haitians that do immigration, multi-service businesses that do, compared to other nationalities?
I mean, that's a great question. In actuality, I think the Latino community tends to have more of these, I guess, these companies, these tax preparers actually doing these applications. I mean, there's a good number of Haitian, I guess, these multi-service corporations that I do see, but I have to say in the Latino community, that's where I see most of it.
Last call for questions for Shannon. Go ahead.
Hi there, my name's Michael Racine. I'm from Philadelphia, through DC, through Haiti. My question is for the people in the country, in Haiti. Sayo Cafe, what kind of immigration support do they have?
I mean, that's an excellent question, right? I mean, the reality is that we talked about before the Haitian Family Reunification Parole Program for people who are able to petition for their family there. I think that was one of the things that I talked about in my presentation. I also want to say basically people who are coming over, if they're able to come over, a lot of times basically what they're doing is doing asylum, they're doing TPS that came out, so they're already here. The problem is getting them here, right? That's really the issue, sorry Karen. That's really the issue at this particular time. We have tried to do, and I don't know, I mean you can answer this also, tried to do some kind of know your rights presentations that we kind of used to do in the jails, but we're going to Haiti to do that. So there's some organizations that I know that were doing that. I think FIAC was doing it at one point, Americans for Immigrant Justice, and I'm not sure if they're still doing it. There's not legislation or any kind of immigration laws at this point that would help them. I see that they're rushing.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm gonna close out questions on Shannon. Thank you. We're gonna move to Gurleen. Please, no editorializing. Your question, the mic is coming. Yep. Yeah, well, no one's blocking the cameras, right? You're good? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Gabrielle Apollon, thank you for all of your work. So people have been concerned that we didn't know that this was coming. I'd love to hear, Gurleen, what do you see coming and what are the trends that you want people to know about?
I'm going to take another one. Let's go over here for Gurleen, right? We're going to take 2 or 3 together so she can answer them collectively so we can get through as many questions as we can because I have 4 minutes. Go.
Hi, I'm Sandy Dorsonville from the Little Haiti Cultural Center. So call to action question. We still haven't gotten the email. I really want you to say that email address out loud. And then second, where can people like myself who have a brick and mortar where people can actually meet to process people, where can we get the documents and the information that we should be giving to our volunteers that we're recruiting to come to the brick and mortar to help assist in processing people as they come to us?
Excellent. Third one.
I just wanted to hear about your experience when it comes to trying to incorporate or mobilize with the intersections between Black Lives Matter and in Haitian community or Haitian organizations in the U.S. and seeing how that potential allyship could help organize, strategize, and mobilize. Exactly.
You got all 3? You need a recap? Okay.
What's coming? For example, last night we received a message saying people should go back under the bridge. Misinformation is the leading guide for people to move from one place to another. So we are expecting to see more people to come. We are expecting to see another Del Rio. Maybe that's not going to be under the bridge, but it will be somewhere else. As I mentioned earlier, we had 4,000 people in Tijuana 2 months prior to Del Rio. What do we expect? We are expecting to see a spike in people migrating from Haiti because of the violence, because of the earthquake, because of all of that. People who have been deported or who have been sent to Haiti are already looking for ways to live again because they do not have anything on the ground for them. So this, what we are seeing, we will see for the next 2, 3, 4 years.
People with brick and mortar that want to help, how do they help?
We have, USCIS have a lot of the information and we are pushing for them to provide those in Haitian Creole where you can get from reputable sources, SUNTLA, Haitian Women for Haitian Refugees in New York, FAM, Haitian Bridge Alliance. We are the only national organization, but there are a lot of people doing the work in your community. So as far as information, know your rights, will continue to organize. So what we are asking is for each locality or organization or brick and mortar to reach out so we can partner with you so we can properly serve the community. How do they reach out? Where do they go? So 2 emails I will send you. The general email is info, INFO, at HaitianBridge.org. HAIT as in Thomas, IAN bridge, not the wall, but the bridge, BRIDGE.org for moun qui vle faire volontaire ou bien qui vle integrate themselves into the work. Allez sous S de Bros, it's D as in David, E, B as in boy, R, O, S as in Sam, S as in Sam, E at HaitianBridge.org. I will repeat it quickly. S as in Sam, D as in David, E, B as in boy, R, O, S, S, E at HaitianBridge.org.
Thank you. Very quickly, what are the coalitions and allies that you're working with?
Yes, as I mentioned before, yes, so as we all know, one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter, she is a first-generation immigrant, citizen. Her parents herself were immigrants. So we have been working with different justice movement, including racial justice movement, to make sure that they understand that immigration is a Black issue. and making sure that Congress prioritize immigration as a Black issue. So we are looking forward to continue building that relationship. March for Black Lives. March for Black Lives have also reached out, and we are moving forward to see how we can create stronger partnership, not only with the Black community, but with all communities to make sure that we get the protection that we need in the services.
So we're going to do one more collective 3 questions for Gurleen. Good. Okay. She has the mic.
My question is, my name is Mario Ledney Montas. I'm a ESL director. And if I want to get contact, I need to know how to be able to build some program to help the immigration. As far as Haiti, I like to know how to do that.
Perfect. Next question. We're going to stack them.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Naomi Blumier, co-founder for Balancing Life in North Miami, Florida. 2 things. Number 1, the last time I checked, I think that there's about 51,000 followers on the Haitian Ladies Network. Group, sorry, on the group. In order for Madame Jozef to really continue and to keep us united, I believe she needs a comms director. Is it possible that this group can put together to finance a comms director for her for 1 year? I think we can do that. So that is a solution.
The Haitian Ladies Network needs a comm director too.
But listen. If we are going to work, if we're going to leave here, and we are going to leave here with specific things that we can do in order to mobilize her, because she's doing the work, let's put it out there that we can do that. Now, if you guys need the money, we can do it for you guys too, but I'm here to vouch for her.
Yeah.
Okay?
We have.
Can donate. So
If you go on our Instagram, under the link tree, we have Haitian Bridge Alliance where you can go ahead and donate. We have put also Folklore, and we also put PIH. So there are at least 2-3 other organizations that we all support that you can go ahead and start donating to, okay?
excellent. And my question is, with the 3 of you guys, you all 3 spoke about policy. Have any one of you actually put a policy together that we can begin to push?
We're going to table that question since it's to everybody else. What was your question?
Shalom. My name is Dr. Marie-Carmel Wansh. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. And Dr. Jamel Bryan also, basically Al Sharpton was very involved in going to the bridge. We have a big, large community in Georgia, and we're down to help. Also, I'm ex-military, so we have a lot of Haitian military folks that we're willing to basically get together to do the push and back up and to help. But we want the main information is that there should be a list of all the different organizations put together by you guys so that we all will know who to click for, whatever we need. And we have a lot of people who have houses who want to take people in, but we have not gotten that information.
Yes. Okay, for the help, in 2016, we created what is called Welcoming the Strangers program. And it was strangers because most of the people who were agreeing to receive people were white people. So, and I will repeat, welcoming the strangers was mainly because the majority of people who were opening their homes to provide support were non-Haitian Caucasian people. So we are rebranding to Welcoming Our Brothers and Sisters program. So what that will look like is if people come in, they need housing, they need schooling, they need legal support, they need medical support. 4 or 5 people can come around that family. One can provide housing. One can say, when you need legal support, I will drive you to your ICE appointment. I will translate for the attorney for you. If they have children, I will help them enroll their children in school. If they have medical care, I will take you to the hospital, to the doctors, etc., so that bagala pa tombe sou non kon seul moun. However, we have a lot of people saying, I have housing, send me, send me, send me. I cannot send anyone to you if we don't have a background check. I don't know who you are. I need to make sure if I'm sending a family to somebody, you don't have XYZ background. I cannot send a little boy and a little girl to anybody's housing and find out they are X, Y, and Z, right? So it has to be a process. It will take at least a month for us to do all of that. That's why we are asking again to reach out to Shirley Sky so that we can continue and create and build those programs.
For Gurleen? This is the last one.
Sorry, it's a simple one, and I didn't introduce myself earlier. I'm Stefan Rosenberg. I don't have an organization. I don't have a big network, but I do have Facebook, and oftentimes people ask me, how can I help, how can I help, how can I help? And I also see a lot of GoFundMe stuff. You know, your kid smiles, and all of a sudden their college is funded. So is there, as a quick, perhaps, one-off boost, is there a GoFundMe for your organization?
She has a proper donate link. Yeah. No. We're going to get to Karen so we can close this out. We're already 16 minutes behind schedule, and we also have to get into the things that are happening on the ground in Haiti. So there's a lot of great content. The ladies are going to be around. You can have the conversation, maybe more one-on-one. So yeah, go ahead with
yes, capacity. I will ask the Haitian Ladies Network to share the AgBlue account that people can donate. I have never done a GoFundMe because I am a very proudful person. I will kick somebody, but anyways. We haven't done any of that, but again, that comes with the capacity. I cannot be under the bridge and at the border and be able to do that as well. Yes, so we have an AgBlue account to donate there. Thank you.
And as our makeshift comms director has said, the Haitian Bridge Alliance, we're all makeshift, we're all volunteer doing the best we can. So the Haitian Bridge Alliance, Focal, PIH, all of these organizations that we have been supporting, their links are directly on our Instagram and on our Facebook page. In the group, we post about them, we post what they're doing, we post their links all the time. If you don't go directly to their website, you can come to the Haitian Ladies Network website, you can come to the Haitian Ladies Network Instagram pages, social media pages, and find direct links back to them. They have a website. This isn't a makeshift fly-by-night organization. They've been doing the work. They have a proper website. They have a proper direct link where when you donate, the money's coming to them. So go directly to their website or come through our page to get to their website. I'm gonna do three questions for Karen, and then we're gonna have to close out.
So real quick, we have done an exhaustive list of places you can donate. One for the earthquake, and the other is for immigration and migrants. If you go to our website, if you go to Haitian Ladies Instagram or our Facebook, you will see these resources of reputable sources. Jesus, it's time for me to go to sleep. Sources that have been vetted. They are not GoFundMe. These are places, organizations that have been here for many, many years, who are doing the work for many, many years on their own, that we know can continue to grow. So just go on our websites, go on our Instagram, go on our social media, and you will find these type of resources and different posts that explain them, okay?
I'm getting the complete closeout. So I'm gonna violate and get in trouble, but 1, 2, 3, and that, Stefan, somebody else. Two questions.
Yeah.
Your questions are super short. I agree, but Karen is here. So go ahead. She's been waiting quite some time. And then Leonie, and then we're done.
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Edwidge Krefker-Bryant. I'm a professor in Florida, at a college in Florida. And this is something I've been thinking a lot about. But since we're talking about power, my thing is that we have to look at what is the economic power that we have. So my question to you is, as you know, The transfer money business is like a $3 billion industry that unites us throughout the world because we all send money to Haiti. It's a $3 billion industry in which the Haitian government also takes money from that as we send money to Haiti, supposedly to build the schools in Haiti. And we know that's not happening. But it is a $3 billion industry here in the United States. So how, and not just in the United States, throughout the world. So how can we capitalize on that? Because that is huge. And I think we need to capitalize on this economic power that we have. How can we do that?
Uh-oh.
Hi, Leonie Elmatin of Miami. My neighbor, Mike Lee, asked me to ask a question. I have my own question, but the quick question is, what are the talking points? If people have to make calls to the White House, to the elected officials, she wants to know, are there talking points that can guide the statement so that we sound intelligent when we're calling? The other question to you, Karen, in terms of your incredible presentation, was how do we begin to build? Because all of this, moving forward from all the obstacles that you presented, is about building trust. And so, how do we begin the process? Even you, girl, in terms of no one signed your petition, is because people don't know, people hear, and so there has to be, in our community, there has to be familiarity before we sign, and we have to sign 10,000 petitions. So my question is, how do we build trust nationally? Because we know that, for example, in Miami, we have trust. We've created these opportunities for us to know each other.
Yeah.
How do we do that nationally?
Okay, so to start with your question about the money, great question, absolutely. And my bigger fear is when my mother's generation is gone, I want them to stay around forever. I believe they might be the last generation that is consistently giving remittances. Because my younger brother and sister, you're back on cousin, cousine, you're pas élevé en Haiti, and sometimes it breaks my heart to see how folks speak about the idea of giving back home amongst the younger generation. They don't get it. So that's a real fear, and it's a source of money, like you said. Tech is part of the answer. I've watched the Brads of the world study exactly what you're saying, see the global money that's moving, and start actual apps that are making it easier to leverage and get the money in and out, and then they're making bank off of it. They're not from Africa, but they figured out a way to help everybody in Ghana and Nigeria get money back to their folks, okay? So one of our biggest imports is our brain. In agriculture aside, we excel in STEM as a people. You can bring a Haitian child here, they don't speak English, mais vaneo en sciences avec mathématiques, okay? So we actually have a group of Haitians that work in Silicon Valley, work in Google, work in the tech industry. I asked one of their wives to start a group called Haiti Tech. I'm full of ideas. I wish people would just implement them, okay? Because I can't do it all. Imagine, see, Haiti Tech, and I hope she's watching. I won't call you out, sis, but she just had a baby, so I get it. Haiti Tech, a group of Haitians in the tech industry in Silicon Valley, right around the money, right under their money, putting out apps, looking at the problems and coming up with tech solutions. Match fini. Nou gen cerveau. We just got to start zobo pedobo. So that's my answer to you, tech. And if you want, I'm happy to connect you with that group. I might have to go to California to organize them. Okay, sis. Because it's right there. It's right there. So that's the answer on that. Next, first answer. There's more. Talking points. Gurleen has a toolkit. Digital organizing is a thing. I have a mentee from the campaign. That's what she does. She creates digital toolkits for campaigns, for presidentials. I'm going to try to bring her to do it for our communities. But girl's got loans. She's got bills, right? I can only ask her to volunteer so much. But I'm going to partner her with Gurleen. I didn't tell you this yet, Gurleen, because, right? No, I'm sure you might be neat. I've been busy. I'm making calls on your behalf. So I've identified a digital strategist that I'd like to, connect you with. I've also identified a policy person. We just haven't had a chance to talk. So again, I'm not special, guys. Hey, what do you do? Oh, let me connect. I'm a connector. That's it. And I'm never asking because of myself. It's just you never know, right? Who can know, who can do, and how we can build the power. That's part of building the power. So there's a toolkit already, Leonie. So Haitian Bridge Alliance, Leonie's neighbor, who's too shy to, it's okay. But Paolo spoke for you. So there's already a toolkit online that has the talking points for you that you can access, okay? Last question, how do we build trust nationally? You're right, HLA, we've been around forever. We fought Harifah and many, many battles. There was a time when there weren't enough Haitian lawyers to fight for Haitians back in the days in the late 70s, and you had the Steve Forresters and the Cheryl Littles and the Ira Kurzbans fighting for us. But between the 80s and 90s, we got enough people through law school and we formed Haitian Lawyers Association in Miami. There's Haitian American Lawyers Association in New York, and I'm sure there are other chapters. So I think what has happened, Leonie, is that the individual chapters in the area have gelled, and now the linkages nationally, and it just takes one conversation between two people that can work together. Oh. How to build, I'm giving an example, I'm sorry, through that. So I'm just saying, if our lawyers link nationally, right? If our nurses link nationally, because that's what it is. There's a New York version of everything that's in Florida. There's a Chicago version of everything that's in Boston. We need a national organization to convene us. That's why I'm saying we need to fundraise, get an executive director, get a comms director, get a policy director, and catch me if you can. And I'm not just saying platitudes here. Guys, there's a whole funding world. There's a whole philanthropic world of rich people that want to do good things. And we need to find them. We have grant makers here, right? Each of us is a catalyst. We can, listen, I'm not trying to give you platitudes, Leonie. We know people in the philanthropic. I just mentioned Alice Contav at Kellogg. I mentioned Patrick. He still has the relationships at Ocean Society. Is anybody here? Hey, madame, s'il vous plaît. Ips. No, that's fine. I'm going to wrap up. Is there anybody here who has any ties to the philanthropic world that's worked with or for a foundation? Okay. So, exactly. So,
Karen,
again, it just takes, if you would like to take these ladies' names, or I will take these ladies' names, and sit around and figure out how we can asset map. This is just, raise your hands again, lady, asset map. Foundations, philanthropic organizations. Nadine, one of our founders, works for a foundation. Hello, asset mapping, okay? This is why we come together, because you're in a room with somebody who can help you do something for somebody else. I know it sounds oversimplified, but it really starts that small. But again, if we had a convening organization, whether it's through the Haitian electeds that has an executive director that's doing this, we need organizers, paid organizers to create these linkages. That's the point.
Thank you, Karen Andre. Thank you. I did skip that one question that went to anybody, but let us know, is there legislation that is currently being pushed that we can support specifically?
Very quickly, HR 6, which is the Driven.
Is it on? They can hear, right? You can hear?
Okay, yeah. So HR 6, there are a lot of different things, but okay. So HR 6, the Dream in Promise Act that will allow over 11 million undocumented people to get their residency and citizenship. We have a lot of Haitians who will qualify for that. I will connect with the Haitian Ladies Network to give access to other bills and other resolutions. But HR 6 passed the House twice, and we have yet to get it through the Senate so that we can get that protection. And I want to say one thing to show the power of the Haitian community. When Senate needed voices to speak on behalf of the 11 million people, they called on the Haitian community, and one amazing young woman by the name of Rose in Rhode Island was the one who represented and spoke on behalf of the 11 million people. Ignite our power.
Perfect ending to the Q&A. I'm sorry. Don't kick me out. Trying to get us back together and in the program. We have a video on what's going on, what's happening on the okay. It's a real 10 minutes. Pas 10 minutes à la haïtienne, no? So at 4:40, my watch time, I'm back on the mic speaking. those of you that are here, you can begin to find your seats. We're 4 minutes out. Let's start making our ways to our seats, start closing out these conversations.